Say yeah, yeah, yeah.
The winter days, they last forever.
But the weekends went by so quick. We're riding around this little country town. We were going nuts, girl, out in the state. One night, me with my big mouth. Couple guys had to put me in my place. When I see those guys these days, we just laugh and say, remember when? That's when sport was sport. And grooving was grooving. Dancing with everything. We were young and we were improving. Laughing, laughing with our friends. Holding hands meant something, baby. Outside the club, cherry bomb. Our hearts were really pumping. Say yeah, yeah, yeah. Say yeah, yeah, yeah. Aye. Say yeah, yeah, yeah. Say yeah, yeah, yeah. 17 has turned 35. I'm surprised that we're still living. If we're done any wrong, I hope that we're forgiven. Got a few kids of my own, and some days I still don't know what to do. I hope that they're not laughing too loud when they hear me talking like this to you. That's when sport was sport. And grooving was grooving. Dancing with everything. We were young and we were improving. Laughing, laughing with our friends.
Please take your seats. The program will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats. The program will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats. The program is about to begin. Please take your seats. The program will begin now.
Where is my friend when I need
Please welcome to the stage Bloomberg's Carol Masser.
Good morning. How's everybody doing? It is so great to have people back in our building. So welcome, and thank you for being here. Our Bloomberg Live event, it is all about growth, our Growth Summit, and we're really focusing on the customer today. So we're going to have a lot of great conversations about it. Whether you are joining us virtually, welcome as well, or you're here, again, it's just great to have everybody be a part of this. It's so timely because I was looking at a bunch of headlines this morning. So many, Morgan Stanley planning to begin some global cuts in the next few weeks. This is from Reuters. Musk planning to eliminate half of Twitter jobs. Well, that's a story onto its own. House prices will fall by up to 30% in the next year. This is a warning from lenders. Meta's meltdown showing how big tech's invincible era is over. And then you have Carlyle, Apollo, private equity, seeing financing stifling deals as prices slump. A lot of tough headlines out there. We're trying to make sense. And how do you grow? How do you continue to connect with your customer in what could be a tough environment? So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to throw out a bunch of polls, and we want you to be a part of this. They're very important. So if you haven't done this, I'd love for you to do it. Scan the QR code. I think, is it on your badge? Yes. Okay, so scan the QR code. You can also, if you don't do that, you can type https://meet.ps/growth summit in your browser, okay? So if you could go ahead and do that, because we do want to start off with some polls. We want to make sure that you're ready to do that. Before we get started, a couple of announcements. We have incredible sponsors who make this programming possible. Our founding sponsor, Salesforce, we thank them, and our presenting sponsor as well, we thank them, Jobs Ohio. Now, for our virtual attendees, if you have any issues, audio, video quality, try to refresh your browser. You can use also the chat box. It's in the right corner of your screen for support, so do reach out to us. We don't want you to miss anything. Also, a little bit more housekeeping, we have partnered with Wordly. They're an audio-to-text platform. They're transcribing all of today's sessions in real time, so that makes it even more accessible for everybody. You can access Wordly for the real-time transcriptions via the link in the corresponding sessions on the virtual platform, so find it there. If you're in the audience with us here, Wi-Fi information, that's on your badge as well, so you can check that out. We do want to hear from you. We like using social, engaging there. We get a lot of momentum there, so please do that. Hashtag Bloomberg Growth. Bloomberg Growth. You can also track our coverage today. We're at Bloomberg Live on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And then, of course, if you're on the Bloomberg terminal, just head to Live Go. So are you ready for a poll? Are you awake? Yep. All right. Have you had coffee? All right. Let's get to our first poll. So scan that QR code, click the polling icon at the bottom right of the screen. Here's our question. What is the biggest disruption facing your business today? And there are your options: automation and AI, remote working, competitive landscape, inflation. You know, it's funny on remote working, a couple stories today about, I think it was Bank of America saying they want all their trading staff in the office all but 2 days a week. And then Unilever, meantime, going the other way, expanding a 4-day work week to Australia after doing kind of a pilot program in New Zealand. So we're trying to figure this out. All right, so let's see what we get here. Biggest disruption facing your business: competitive landscape, 37%, inflation, 40%. Yeah, that occupies a lot of conversations. All right, we're going to see what our first guest of the day has to say maybe about that as well. Please welcome to the stage, delighted to have him here with us, Scott Mills. He is the president and CEO of BET.
Good morning.
How are you?
Excellent. How about you?
I'm good. I got through my opening. Whew.
Yes.
It's always tough.
You shared some shocking statistics to start there.
Well, let me put that to you. When you look at the biggest disruption facing your business today, Scott, you saw the choices: automation and AI, remote working, competitive landscape, inflation.
The macroeconomic environment. It's the biggest disruption right now.
How tough is it? And how does it apply to you specifically?
So in our business, it has a number of impacts. The first is a huge portion of our business is the ad business, and that market is so sensitive to the broader economic market. So that's a huge driver. And then everybody in media has now pivoted to streaming services, and the fact that consumers are now in much more challenging economic situation, that we're seeing the implications of that with respect to churn on the streaming side as well. So we're really experiencing it in multiple places, and then you have the broader economic effects of how it impacts the cable ecosystem. So that's the biggest challenge at the moment.
Do you think recession is inevitable?
I think it's highly likely.
Okay.
I mean, I do think
It's a little less than inevitable.
right. I wouldn't want to go fully inevitable. I think my professors from college would be upset if I were up here pontificating about that. But and I do think we'll get to the other side of it, and it's all about how do we all kind of prepare and plan for to get through it, and then have to kind of continue to thrive when we get to the other side of it.
All right, so let me ask you, I mean, you've been BET president for 4 years. You're very familiar with this company.
Yes.
You were there before you took over that position. When you got to the company, talk to us, the BET brand, I think you said you saw risks ahead. You knew it couldn't just be cable.
That's right. When we were looking at BET was in the situation that most legacy cable brands were, right? The cable landscape was declining, and audience was declining, revenue was declining, relevance was declining.
Right.
And the issue for us was that for BET to be BET, we weren't focused on the next couple of years. We were really saying that it's a singular entity. It plays a role in the Black community like no other platform. And we'd seen how other legacy media brands and other industries had really failed to kind of create a roadmap for growth of their business, and as a result diminished, and ultimately a lot of them perished. And we had this perspective that we had to set BET up to be a thriving company, not just in 5 years, but 10 years and 15 years. And so we focused on what did we have to do to accomplish that.
So let's talk about that. We've actually thrown up a slide, which I think is really, obviously relevant in terms of what you guys are doing. You've got this ecosystem and everything. We see this at Bloomberg too. Everything's got to feed one another.
That's right. That's right.
And
that was really our starting point. A lot of people in the cable space said, okay, cable's declining, and we're going to move and focus on what's next. And we took a slightly different perspective, which we said, cable is important and it is declining, but it's going to be an important part of the ecosystem for quite some time. What we have to do is build out the other pieces of the ecosystem and structure them in a way that they can be interconnected and complementary. And so what that's allowed us to do is actually grow the overall enterprise that's BET. So we added streaming service and studios, and we've expanded our digital. But in so doing, it allowed us to expand our relationships with talent, with our advertising partners, with content providers, and it ultimately went back and strengthened our legacy cable business. And so that business, unlike a lot of other legacy cable businesses, restored growth as well. So we have this really, it's, whether you want to call it a flywheel, a virtual cycle, like all of those kind of fun jargony terms.
Right.
But it really is about this series of interconnected platforms that support each other and pull more audience in, more revenue in, more content into our ecosystem.
I mean, you've seen an impact, top bottom line.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
So when you first BET Plus, talk to us, when you first kind of took it out, created it, what was the buy-in when you were going out to whether it was an Amazon or Apple or Roku?
Right, well was
it like, yeah, got it?
Well, the starting point was a question of whether or not there was actually a need for a BET streaming service.
Did that just kind of shock you?
It surprised me, but I understood that one of the things is that the dominant streamers at the time, 2018, so you had Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, they had, in addition to spending a lot of money on content, they spent an extraordinary amount of money on marketing, right? And so they'd really done a good job of establishing perceptions and beliefs. And Netflix, to their credit, they ran an ad called Strong Black Lead. I'm not sure if most people saw it, right? But they actually targeted black media with this ad. It broke my heart. We have the biggest show on cable television, the BET Awards, and our sales guys sold Netflix a spot in the BET Awards for them to run an ad about them being Strong Black Lead. Anyhow.
We're living in unusual times.
Right. And, but I share that to say that there was a question as to whether or not the lane that BET occupies, which is super serving black consumers,
right,
whether or not people had built streaming services that satisfied the need that Black consumers had in that space. It was a question because we're not arrogant. We go into this perspective and say we anchor our insights in research. So we did a lot of research. Long story short, what the data showed us was that Black consumers actually were streamed more media than any other demographic group. That was the good news. Then our data told us that Black consumers were extraordinarily happy with Netflix and Amazon and Hulu. That was a little alarming. But when we asked the third question, that's when we saw our lane, which was when we asked them, how satisfied are you with the Black content that these general entertainment streamers provide? We saw double-digit declines in the top 2 box scores. And we said, there's our opportunity. And the second piece I like to share is that we looked at the top shows watched by general audiences on Netflix at the time and the top shows watched by Black audiences on Netflix at the time. Right. And one of the top 5 shows among Black viewers was The Office. Now, The Office is amazing, and it's really great, but there's actually no universe in which it's a top 5 show with Black viewers, right? And it really evidenced that, in fact, people were consuming that because the content they want wasn't on the platform.
Right.
And so it was really our lane to then say, we build a platform.
So in other words, when you can't really find what you want.
That's right, you'll consume something else, exactly right. And so long story short, what we said was our opportunity was to build a platform that went really deep in providing the content that our community wanted as a supplement to general entertainment, right? Not as competitive with general entertainment providers. And then when we saw, to your point, when we went out and we had to speak to the platform providers, you have to go to Roku and you have to go to Apple and you have to go to Amazon and say, we're going to launch this service, will you be supportive? And we showed that statistic that very high appreciation by Black viewers of the streaming services, but significantly lower appreciation of the Black content. The folks at Amazon said, that's exactly what our data says, and we're really looking forward to supporting this initiative.
Wow. And it's essentially realizing that the market was missing out on a whole audience. Talk to us, you do create some incredible content.
I appreciate that.
So talk to us about some of the deals that you're making with individuals, because this is it's a big part of your growth story. It's about meeting what your customers, what the Black audience wants to watch. You've made deals with Taraji B. Henson, Lee Daniels, Gabrielle Union, Tyler Perry.
Right.
All of this a game changer?
Yeah, absolutely a game changer. The starting point really, when we started recrafting BET for the future, was entering to a strategic partnership with Tyler Perry. And that was really the first of a number of key steps that we made to transform BET. And it's worked really well. He's been an amazing partner. It was extraordinarily challenging to pull off.
Well, wait, let's talk about that. And this is, I think, a great lesson for everybody. This is something you thought about a long time ago.
Yes.
And suggested it to the folks at Viacom.
Yes.
Like
so
how many years ago?
We thought
2006?
Yeah, 2006, 2007 was when we started. I started evangelizing about the merits of BET doing a partnership with Tyler Perry. And the analog that I use is that if you accept that BET is to the Black community what, say, Disney is to children, that when Pixar came along, right, we all know it was hugely disruptive to Disney, and it really took them off of their game with respect to creating content for kids. Tyler Perry was a similar phenomena. BET was thriving. He entered the television landscape, and his content was transformative, much like Pixar's animated movies were transformative. And BET did exactly what Disney did. We tried to compete with them and what have you, and realized that Tyler was singular in creating a particular type of content that resonated with audiences. And my view was we shouldn't try to out-Tyler Tyler. We should partner with Tyler, bring him into the BET ecosystem.
We should be with Tyler.
Right, we should be with Tyler. We should allow him to thrive and flourish in our ecosystem, and then the rest of BET can do the things that it's really great at, much like Mr. Iger did with Pixar, right? And eventually they stopped competing, they brought them into the ecosystem. They bought them. We did not buy Tyler. He's not for sale, to be clear. Tyler, I said that. But so you can partner with Tyler, and we brought him into the ecosystem, and in bringing him in, he has flourished in a way that exceeded all of the success that he had prior, and also BET has flourished. And so it is very much like the Disney-Pixar dynamic. But in 2008, we tried to sell it in. Ultimately, we couldn't get buy-off at the Viacom corporate level because Tyler, it was a big undertaking. And then we came back to it in 2017, and we're able to get it done.
tougher to get it done and a little bit more expensive?
You know, the trick is if you don't move early and, you know, people have
Trust your
extraordinary,
gut.
that's right, if people have extraordinary success, you'll have to pay for that.
Well, there's one fun nugget to this story because Tyler Perry actually had to, break up with Oprah to do this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I didn't have a relationship with Tyler, so when in 2016, 2017, we got a green light to go and pursue this, the issue was Tyler was in a deal with Oprah and Discovery Networks. And so the issue was, okay, it's challenging enough when, you know, we understood he was going to come to the end of his deal, and so the view was, can you get him to not renew and come with you?
Right.
And so you're always comfortable competing with other companies, but you're really not comfortable competing with Oprah Winfrey. And they were great friends. And but long story short, Tyler had a vision for what he could do in partnership with BET and then Viacom, now Paramount.
Yeah.
And he was able to articulate that vision and why he thought it was a unique opportunity to Oprah, and she generously understood and said, we can still be friends even if you leave me. So it worked out.
You don't want to tick off Oprah.
Right.
Were you a little nervous, though? That was a big deal. And I know, I'm not asking about the terms, but I'm assuming it was expensive. Were you a little nervous? I mean, that's risk.
Yeah,
he
yes.
is very successful, but it was a risk.
Right. It was tremendous risk. It was tremendous risk. And so what we had was extraordinary high conviction. And that conviction was anchored in all of the analysis and research that we'd done with respect to really understanding how his content performed relative to other content, relative to other price points. And it gave us extraordinary conviction. Now, we had to use 150% of that conviction to actually get the deal done. And it was understood that if it didn't work, that the consequences would be profound. But because we were so anchored in that conviction,
I might not be talking to you
right?
today.
I think it's fair. Without question, there have been key. No, it's true.
Yeah.
There have been key points where you've had to put your career on the line for these high conviction plays, high risk, high conviction plays. And I think to the credit of Bob Bakish, the CEO of Paramount, when we walked him through the logic of it, he said he saw the logic. He said he appreciated that it was a risky undertaking, but that the logic made sense, and he supported the initiative. And actually, the partnership has over-delivered, and it then set us up for the next big idea that we wanted to take. And we said, okay, we've done that one worked, here's the next big idea. So
I just think it's, you know, when you told me the story the first time around, I just thought about like lessons learned, right? And you said sometimes, yeah, it's really risk, but if you have, you know, very risky, but you've got high conviction around it, you've done your work, you got to go for it.
That's right.
The other thing is, this is something that you worked on 10, 12 years.
Right.
Or didn't let it go away. You
Right.
still knew, and you just had to have the right time. And I just think it's a great lesson because it's paid off.
Right.
And it's provided you guys a lot of momentum.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think it's a perspective around what are the single biggest strategic levers in your business. You know, for example, we launched a studio in 2000 and at the end of 2020, beginning of 21. That idea was an idea that I actually pitched in 2001.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Is this Content for Change?
Well, this was actually the BET Studios where we created a separate venture and we provided equity to top Black creators.
Right.
Kenya Barris came in, Gabrielle Union, Taraji P. Henson, others came into this venture. But the issue was, again, having a perspective for a strategic perspective for your base business and how it can evolve. And so I always say I'm either a really bad salesperson because you pitched something in 2001, you can't do it until 2021. And similarly with Tyler. But each of these things, as we've launched them and landed them, they've created outsized value and they've really positioned BET to continue to grow.
Well, and actually, and forgive me, because Content for Change is, you launched this, and this is to address the way racism and racial inequities are perpetuated in media. It's something we talk about a lot here at Bloomberg. But you do think of your Black consumer in a big way, and you think of the Black community and what they need on all different levels. You did it during COVID. You raised $20 million for a COVID relief specifically for the Black community. I mentioned launching for Content for Change. And this whole idea, you know, one of the conversations we have so much about the inequities in this world is it's about creating wealth. It's not income equality, it's creating wealth,
That's right.
generational wealth. And that's what you're doing with working with content creators and giving them some equity. This is a game changer.
That's exactly
But
right.
community, we talk about cultures at companies and having a North Star. You are constantly thinking about the Black community.
That's exactly
in
right.
so many different ways. How did the pandemic and George Floyd just kind of crystallize that for you?
It really,
I'm sure it was there anyway.
it was there, but it crystallized it in this extraordinary affirmation of the importance of BET. Not BET today, but BET forever. And the team at BET, BET's thriving today, and that's a beautiful thing, but we're really focused on ensuring that BET will be thriving 15 years from now. Because it's the only entity that exists to play the role that we play, and I think the two examples you cite are perfect. So the first was when COVID hit, obviously it impacted everyone around the world, everyone around the country. Because of our extraordinary focus on our community, and not just and we're a research-based organization, right? We don't do things by gut, we do everything by research. So we had all of the data that spoke to all the things, disproportionate health conditions, disparate economic resources, concentration in industries that were going to be disproportionately impacted by COVID.
The inequities continue,
yes,
right?
And the dearth of financial cushions on which to fall back. So we understood that the impact of the pandemic on the Black community was going to be absolutely disproportionate relative to other communities, and that the world was scrambling to respond to the general, but we had to respond to the specific. And so we said we have to very quickly raise money to support Black Americans who are disproportionately affected. The government and lots of other organizations are going to try to help everybody, but the needs are going to be even greater because for all those reasons I just said. And so we worked with leaders in the Black community, some of our biggest corporate partners. We worked with our parent company. We worked with philanthropic institutions, and in about 2.5 months, raised just under $20 million specifically to support Black Americans who were disproportionately impacted by COVID. And I was struck because one of the groups that we engaged was there's a group of Black senior managing directors at Morgan Stanley. And so they made decisions that they would individually contribute, but then they presented the materials to the Morgan Stanley Foundation. And the Morgan Stanley Foundation came back and said, we're going to contribute as well, because this is in fact the only vehicle in the country to assist Black Americans who are impacted by COVID, right? And so it's kind of a but for BET thing, and that's the thing that gets us excited about coming to work every day, that we can do those things. And then content for change very quickly. Similarly, our view was throwing money at this issue is not the solve, right? And we spent a lot of time thinking about it and said at the end of the day, the underlying cause of kind of these lethal encounters between police and the Black community, the underlying cause is racism, right? You can do a bunch of things, but the underlying cause is racism. And we said, is there something we can do to try to impact that? So we took a giant step backwards and said, well, we're a media company. We understand content is used to shape perspectives, beliefs, narratives, even actions and behaviors.
Right.
So can we actually work to identify specific narrative devices and techniques that can be used in content to counter-program racist beliefs and narratives, and ultimately try to, the language we use is inoculate America from racism. It turns out, I assumed we could just go to academia and say, tell us those 5 things, and we could take them, we could share them. We went out and we met with all these academics, and they said, actually, nobody knows what they are. I said, okay, that'll slow us down. But having said that, we played the role that's unique to ourselves. We figured out in which institution we thought was best positioned to actually do the research and identify the techniques, where we partnered with the Spark Institute at Stanford University, behavioral sociologists and psychologists, and we're actually engaged in an exercise, the researchers there, to specifically identify narrative devices and techniques that can counter-program racist narratives and beliefs. And once we establish those at scale, quantifiably determined, we will then share them with a broad array of content producers, not just BET's producers, but across Paramount Global, across the entire media ecosystem. And so you can insert these devices and techniques into your content to start to change beliefs and harmful beliefs and perceptions.
I mean, part of it is to have the conversation and then give them tools, right? Like, to think differently when they approach a project. Hey, one thing I want to ask you, full transparency, I came across this question that you were asked in an interview in Entrepreneur earlier this year. So I'm not stealing it, I'm just borrowing it and giving credit to the content creator. But the question I thought was really smart. You're the chief executive of an established legacy brand. How do you know when to innovate and push the brand forward without betraying its classic appeal?
And I love that question. And what we've done with BET is to really understand what makes BET special? Where should we be and where shouldn't we be? I was hired by Bob Johnson at BET in 1997. And he'd taken the brand and he'd put it in a lot of different places. There was BET clothing and BET makeup and BET credit cards and BET restaurants. And at the time, I had a perspective that we should actually figure out what is the framework for the deployment of the BET brand, because it's not clear it extends to all of these places. And what we've landed on is a framework that actually governs the success of where we deploy the BET brand, is that BET can thrive at every intersection of content, community, and culture. And once you understand that, and once you really anchor yourself in that, every intersection of content, community, and culture, as business people, we can look at the landscape today and say, where are those intersection points? Of those intersection points, which ones are actually compelling businesses? Because there are a lot of intersection points that are not compelling businesses.
Right.
But where everyone intersection is a compelling business, we've gone and built leadership positions in streaming, in digital, in studios, in linear. And as we look at the landscape going forward, with that construct, it governs where we play, where we build businesses, where we focus. And it also governs where we don't play. There are places that
So you say no to a lot of
say
things.
no to a lot. Because there are a lot of places, it's not simply, it's a place that's relevant to Black consumers. That's too narrow, right? That we won't, it's not simply, it's a place that where content is relevant, right? It literally has to be the intersection of content, community, and culture.
All right, so then, I was thinking of the chart we showed. So how do you grow that ecosystem? Where does the growth come from?
So there are lots of ways, because and it's really fun because we're having so much fun. We are really growing and thriving, and obviously that creates lots of opportunity.
But even with increased competition, there's so much. The one thing we talk about. I mean, you guys are a media company.
Yes.
There's so much media out there, right? There's social, there's traditional, there's all the streaming services. Yes. I can't even keep track of it. And they're all competing for our time at a time when we're coming out of the pandemic and people want to go back out in the world and actually do things. So. Right. Okay, so then how do you grow the ecosystem within that?
Well, the way you grow the ecosystem is, and part of the reason we focus on the fact that they're interconnected and supporting and complementary platforms, is because each platform makes the other platform stronger. So we window our streaming content on our linear platform, and what that does is it massively increases the depth and breadth of the original content on our linear platform in a time where so many others are actually reducing the content on their platform, linear platforms. And so that's a natural opportunity to just take share. So we're taking share in that space. Okay. And then similarly, as the cable landscape shrinks, there's a lot of pressure on advertisers who seek to reach our audience and our community in high-value premium environments. As the landscape shrinks, there are fewer of those environments. So it makes the BET environment, the last environment at scale, even more valuable than it was before. So having that perspective. And then as we build the ecosystem and more talent comes into our ecosystem, it creates even more opportunities. And so we're finding that this combination of these unique capabilities that exist in BET, we have a singular sales team, this beautiful thing, and I think I can say this, Mark Pritchard, the Chief Brand Officer at Procter & Gamble, he was recently being honored at an event, and he took a moment to acknowledge his fellow honorees, and one of his fellow honorees was the president of media sales at BET, Louis Carr, my colleague. And Mark, when he was acknowledging everybody, he says, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that Louis Carr has played an extraordinary role in the evolution of Procter & Gamble's understanding of the value of the Black consumer market, right? And it's through those types of capabilities,
right,
applying them on these opportunities allows us to continue to grow.
All right, I've got to wrap up, but
Yes,
I have 3 quick rapid-fire questions. A question every leader should be asking themselves today when it comes to their customer. Quick answers.
Are you relevant?
Are you relevant? What is something you think we should all keep an eye on for clues about trends that may impact the growth and direction of our world?
I think the biggest driver as a person in media, the single biggest driver has always been technology. Understanding that technology it's always creating new opportunities and creating new risks. And if you just build that into your DNA, that you understand that literally the cards will be reshuffled, redealt every 5 years because of technology, and just accept that and be prepared for that. I think that's it.
Love that. Last question. If you find you have 20 minutes of found time in any given workday, how would you spend it to further grow your business and strategy or to connect better with your customer?
I believe in the power of yes.
And you can say meditating or taking a walk.
Right.
That's okay too.
Right. Well, for me, I think it's the power of yes
Power of yes.
the power of yes. And what I mean by that is it's really easy as busy executives to say, no, I can't do this. No, I can't do that. I can't do this lunch. I can't meet with this, this group. I can't attend this event. And for me, it really is the power of yes. Say yes, open up, be exposed to new people, new experiences, new consumer opportunities, and then lean into them.
Scott Mills, thank you so much. What a great way to kick it off. Scott Mills, BET.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Salesforce Global Customer Growth and Innovation Evangelist Tiffani Bova, Colgate-Palmolive Chief DE&I Officer Derek Gordon, and MasterCard Executive Vice President of U.S. Financial Institutions, Bonita Soni, with Bloomberg's Janet Wu.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you and with these very accomplished executives. To begin, we know what your companies do. They are well known, 3 very different industries, but I want to begin with just a bit about your role within your companies, what has to go right every day and what you hope doesn't go wrong. So Tiffani, let's begin with you.
Sure. I get the wonderful pleasure of being able to meet with customers around the world and sort of share with them the art of the possible. As was just mentioned, technology is such a key part of growth and business today that it gives them some inspiration that others are facing the same challenges and others are also getting the greatest opportunities we have today.
All right, and Derek?
So I'm the Chief Diversity Officer at Colgate-Palmolive, and I am about the cultural transformation of the company. We have included diversity in our growth strategy as a key enabler for that. It is in our corporate purpose when we talk about creating an environment for all people in the planets, reimagining a healthier world for people, pets, and planets. And diversity is so critical for us to be able to deliver against both of those. We're trying to create that evolution so that our culture supports it in terms of inclusion is kind of the key focus of my life.
And Bonita, your role within MasterCard?
So I have the pleasure of serving our U.S. financial institution business for the North America region. But little known fact, MasterCard's not a credit card company. Yes. We are a payment technology organization, and we similarly are in a mission-driven purpose for inclusive growth. We do that through technology for our end users, consumers and small businesses, but also for our employees, and making sure that what we do when we deliver is great experiences that are simple, safe, and secure.
And of course, technology is changing rapidly in all of our workplaces. And I want to ask you, how is technology changing the customer experience and also the interaction with the customers and your workforce? Tiffani.
Well, I think the pandemic really accelerated a lot of projects that were underway around how do we engage better with our customers, and our being the collective, right? But I would also say that on the consumer side, those experiences we have in our day-to-day lives are now threading through to what we do in our business lives. And so those expectations have forever changed. They're higher, it's immediate, it's speed, it's trust, it's all those things that drive in the consumer space are now sort of making their way into the business space. And I think that is creating this dynamic of how do we shift from B2C mentality into the B2B world when it comes to those experiences that our customers collectively want from us.
And I know that Salesforce services such a wide range and a huge number of companies in such diverse areas. I'm going to ask you more about that later. Derek, I know that you're looking at initiatives, but I also want to bring in that Colgate-Palmolive is products, and we've had supply chain issues, and you have customers around the world. What are, from your vantage point, what are you seeing with the impacts of technology that companies are relying more and more on these days?
Yeah, so let me start by, we are very much in the middle of a digital transformation as a company, and that goes across the way that we market to our consumers, about the way that we run the plants that we do, and we've hired recently a chief digital officer to be able to help guide us through that transformation so that we are much more aware of technology and incorporating it into the way that we gather and use data and think about how we will ultimately change the business. We've even restructured, particularly for the North American world now, our approach kind of in terms of the structure within the organization to make sure that we are effectively digital first in terms of how we are connecting with our consumers to be able to effectively drive the business.
Mm-hmm. And Benita, as you pointed out, financial services company, millions and millions of transactions on a daily basis that also requires a lot of customer service. No doubt MasterCard has to leverage more technology in order to stay connected to the customer. How are you doing that?
Yeah, indeed, technology is the backbone of what we do, but it does require us to be thoughtful, scalable, safe, agile, inclusive, and there's a different adoption curve that we have to contemplate all around the world. Consumers need choices. They're not all the same, and the way we meet their needs means we have to understand them implicitly. That goes for employees as well, and make sure that we're delivering solutions that meet them where they are.
We were talking about digital transformation. I know, Tiffani, you brought that up. Derek, you brought that up. Derek, can you give us any examples of what's happening within Colgate-Palmolive about how work has changed since the pandemic when it comes to digital upscaling?
So one of the things that we are doing from a digital transformation part is, frankly, we're badging capability in terms of being able to provide training to the organization across the functions so that they better understand the role of digital experts kind of within the organization so that they understand how to be able to connect with them. That is, again, as I mentioned, really now we've restructured the way that we are doing work from a marketing perspective to reach out to our consumers in a very digital fashion. So all of that no longer stays resident with the brand managers, which is historically how it used to be, but that work now goes to and is delivered by kind of a function within it that's about really integrated marketing, where digital is a key focus of that. I've got to come back to diversity now for a minute. That the core of all of this and the value of digital in terms of the way that we reach out to our consumers really does mean that we have to have a better and inherent understanding of who our consumers are, what motivates them, how to understand what their needs are, and digital is a key enabler for us to be able to do that, as well as internally making sure that we have people that understand kind of the starting foundation, if you will, for that kind of research. Any good marketer is going to be able to get the insights, but if you have a diverse organization, you actually get a head start, at least in terms of understanding some of the motivations that are there.
I want to ask you about that people challenge in a moment, but first, Tiffani, you have a unique position within Salesforce because they work with so many partner companies. Do you see trends within your partners as far as digital transformation?
I would say more and more the conversation is not just about how do we create greater connections with our customers, but also how do we create greater connections with our employees. The fastest way to get customers to love your brand is to get employees to love their job. And we don't always digitally transform with our employee in mind. We do a lot of work to digitally transform for our customers to make it easier for them to do business with us and have these great experiences. But then we push the burden onto our employee, unfortunately. The average enterprise has 900 or so applications, and yet only 27% of them are integrated. And so that burden falls on the employee to say, how do I continue to deliver these compelling experiences for customers? Because that's what I'm supposed to do every day. But organizations aren't always setting their employees up for success. So what's been great is hearing executives now contemplate that employees are much more into the conversation than they were, I think, pre-pandemic. And I think that has been a great result of a terrible couple of years we've had. So I'm excited to see how executives are starting to change that mindset a little bit and orient not only around being customer-centric, but also being very employee-focused.
I think this is a good point to address the issue that I would say every representative from every company in this room is facing, and that is the workforce shortage. Your three companies have massive workforces, tens and tens of thousands of people. Benita, your workforce is also global. We know that everyone is having a hard time hiring. Can you tell us a little bit about the situation at MasterCard and how you are trying to find and recruit the right talent?
Yeah, indeed, it's a terrific question, and actually I want to build on the point that Tiffani made, which is around ensuring that we do remain focused on our employee base, and as a technology company, unlocking technology to support them and be able to connect, because the reality is one of the implications of the pandemic was feeling a little disconnected. Technology didn't react together, but did it bring me along with it? And so we created a program and a technology-based program called Unlocked at MasterCard. And what that is a platform that's AI-driven, that is employee-led, that allows our team members to connect with one another, whether through creating peer networking groups, whether to identify mentors and mentees, whether to be able to look for short-term assignments to allow them to upskill and try new roles with the safety and security of the role that they have. So as much as it's about attracting new talent and having a great purpose-driven brand that allows us to do that, but also ensuring that we're retaining and engaging the employees we have and fostering their growth and development through technology.
Derek, since you have a role with DEI, a lot of that involves retaining talent. So let me ask you the same question. What are you doing in order to both find and then keep that talent?
So I'd say there are three fundamental things that we are really working on as a company, and I'm going to start with the one that most directly impacts me, and that is really about building a culture of belonging. At the end of the day, we know that companies who have a higher incidence of belonging actually will outperform those that do not have it. It increases the retention of the employees, it increases their overall engagement, and their commitment to put effort into the work that they do every day. So making sure that everybody feels like they can be their authentic self, feels like they are really justified in impacting the business and capable of impacting the business is really critical for us to lay the foundation for retention going forward. The second is about the way that we work. We've got an effort that we've been working a couple of years now that we call FEED, which is all about focus, experimental, empowerment, and digital, to be able to effectively drive the business. So I want to talk about experimental and empowerment as two of the key things that become enablers for us, so that people feel empowered to make decisions like they own their business and they can actually affect the outcome, and that they can be more creative in terms of some of the solutions, borrowing from tech, so that it's something safe to try, then it's something that they will actually do on the business. And the last piece is really about career development, the career pathing, to make sure that the people in the organization believe and see that they have an opportunity to be able to move up within the organization and that they understand what that career path looks like for them. Mm-hmm. Focusing in those areas is really critical for us.
Derek, I want to stay with you for a moment because your career path changed. You went from managing the global toothbrush business, which I think would be actually fun, not just good for your health, but fun, to then going into strategy and initiatives. How did that happen, and what sort of upscaling did that involve on a personal level for you?
Okay, so I grew up as a commercial guy. Started in brand management, in marketing, then to general manager. I ran a Canadian business. Before this, I was running our global toothbrush business. And we got a call post-George Floyd to ask if I would consider doing this role, because I would hopefully approach it from a very different manner, so that we could actually accelerate our progress around building a more inclusive and diverse organization. I thought about it over a weekend and ultimately decided that there was a window of opportunity that I really did believe that we could help drive a cultural change. Yeah. And I've really been enjoying doing it. This did mean that I needed to sort of step back and learn about diversity and inclusion, and really in short order to help create a strategy for the company on how we were going to deliver against diversity and inclusion. And that required me to do a lot of participation with outside organizations and panels to be able to sort of better understand the dynamic. It involved me talking to people within the organization that were diverse, as well as talking to the leaders of the organization for each of our divisions and each of our functions to kind of understand where they were so we could then try to drive the change. There's a lot of socialization of the perspectives and the tasks that we are using to drive going forward. The one thing I do want to say, last piece, diversity and inclusion is not an initiative. It is who we are and the way that we think and the way that we operate. I would love for my job to go away, to not need to exist, but to do that, it requires long-term, intentional, consistent effort and education within the organization, and it needs to be pervasive in everything that we do. So it is, as I mentioned earlier, it's in our corporate strategy. It is in our corporate purpose. It is in the diversity strategy that we've created, and it's in the way that we work together every day.
And as we've seen, every research indicates that when you do achieve these initiatives, it affects the bottom line. Tiffani, you are the growth evangelist. So even as we face the problems of doing business in this era, every company wants to grow. And I want to dig into a little bit more about your saying that happiness within the workplace does impact growth. And to that, again, you work with so many different companies. What are you seeing? What needs to happen with companies in order to foster that growth with their workforce internally? And because of this, we're not seeing people, companies can't afford to lose employees that find better opportunities elsewhere. They have to grow within. So please speak about that.
Well, this is the first time we've had sort of 4 or 5 generations, in the workforce working. which means their expectations are very different. But as I briefly mentioned earlier, we've spent a lot of time as organizations hyper-focused on the customer. Customer experience, we're customer-centric. How do we improve the lives of our customers, which we do as well. Customer success is one of our core tenets. But I would say that what we, along the way, have forgotten about was, well, then what do we do for those employees? So they're looking for things. We went out and did some research and found that those brands that are really good at doing both employee experience and customer experience saw a 1.8x faster growth rate than those that did not. So for $1 billion brand, it's a $40 million or so impact. That starts to get people interested. But if it's so obvious, why wasn't everyone doing it? And that tended to be the first comment I'd get back. Well, if it's so obvious, like, of course happy employees lead to happy customers. I'm like, of course, but are your employees happy? And it's like, well, our once-a-year survey tells us that they're really happy. I'm like, okay, that's why you don't know what's going on and you're having quiet quitting and you're having this great resignation and all the terms that we've got going on. And so how do we start to really look into what are the attributes? So Edelman just, in their barometer trust report said that employees bounced to the #1 stakeholder for long-term company success. First time it was employee and not customer. And all of these things happening simultaneously show you that we have not been paying as much of attention to our employees as we could be, with whether it's diversity efforts, whether it's training and upskilling, all of that. But it's also trust, it's career development, it's seamless technology, it's C-suite alignment, the executives saying what they're doing and doing what they're saying. I mean, there's so much that goes underneath it. But I'm super excited to see that people are now starting to have these really difficult conversations about the fact that we need to start looking at, if we're going to be customer-centric, we've got to start paying attention to our employees more.
Benita, a question for you, a challenge that's specific to financial services. You have to deal with a lot of data, not just storing the data, but you have to protect it and safeguard it. But a lot of jobs that are related to that can be tedious. Again, financial services requires a huge workforce. What are you doing to use automation that perhaps makes some of the jobs within MasterCard that were standard jobs 5 or 10 years ago to make them less tedious so the employees want to stay and grow within MasterCard?
Yeah, it's a great question, Janet. Look, we think about people from every aspect every day as part of our jobs, whether it's our end users, consumers and small business, or it's our employees. And that means we have to create those experiences, leveraging technology, keeping them safe and secure, but also having fun. And that means agility, always on listening, testing and learning, trying new things. One of the things that we do with our team members all across the world, regardless of the role that they play, they could be an engineer, they could be a salesperson, they could be an HR partner, right? Whatever role they play, they're all invited to be part of our innovation challenges. We do innovation challenges all around, and that allows us to bring the diversity of thinking, the diversity of everybody's perspectives into the moment where employees from various functions are winning patents because they get to be part of these challenges that see the light of day. We then put our support behind them, we invest in them, we test them with real people, including yourselves, and we make sure that there's something that are meeting specific needs. But we do bring the fun because we make sure that they get to get outside of their day jobs for a moment and have a chance at something new.
We love these words, fun and happiness. Quick question for all of you. This panel is flying by and we're approaching our final few minutes. But whenever there's change within a company, you find that there's some hesitation, maybe fear at worst, hesitation, uncertainty. So can I ask all three of you briefly how you get people on board when you want to make a change, whether it's with an initiative dealing with diversity or whether it's saying we're going to change how we do business? Tiffani, I know, again, you work with a lot of companies. So do you have any tips on how you can do this?
This is going to be a little cliche, right? But you have to have a beginner's mind, right? You cannot have that fixed mindset. You can't have that expert's mind to say, I've done this before, I know how to do it again, or we tried it 5 years ago and it failed, or that'll never work here because your culture won't accept it. Whatever the reason, you have to be willing to say, I'm going to try something, and even if I fail, or even if we fail, it's okay, we're going to learn and keep going. Do you measure failure, or do you only measure success? I mean, that's a great way to say, am I really pushing the organization to try things that they might not have tried because they would have had the fear of, quote unquote, failing? And I think that is where, when you're talking to executives and you ask the question, what are you doing that makes you really uncomfortable? You start to get to the heart of what are the hard decisions they're having to make each day. And that requires at least a little bit of space and time every day to be, as the previous conversation, 20 minutes. What do you do during that time? Do you block 20 minutes every day to just really open your mind up, have conversations, and challenge everyone to try new things? And I think that is where people are getting excited and finding joy in what they get to do every day.
Derek, a question to you, and this is interesting because while D&I initiatives have always been there, now it's in the forefront, which means that the change and the mind shift has to adjust hard right now, that it has to be something that every workforce thinks about. So how do you introduce these ideas and get fast adoption?
So I'm going to start, diversity and inclusion has been sort of a task for organizations for going on 50 years now, and it was very much because it's the right thing to do. And we have made no progress as industries against creating diverse organizations because it's the right thing to do. The key thing, I think, for any organizational change starts from actually showing the value of that change to the organization. What we now know is that more diverse and inclusive organizations outperform those that are less diverse and inclusive, and you have to be able to talk about that. What we know is that diverse and inclusive organizations improve the overall experience in the sense of belonging of the people that are in the company, and people are often the largest line item on our P&Ls. So when you think about optimizing and making sure that you're getting the most value out of the organization, doing that with the people in the organization matters an awful lot and delivers the return that we are actually looking for. And change less has to come from the people at the top, talking the talk and walking the walk and doing it consistently. It is not about one communication, it is about continuing to communicate. The last piece second piece that I'd say is that this kind of change is very much driven by driving accountability into the organization, being transparent, measuring and telling people how you are performing against that measurement so they can see. And I'm not just talking about representation. For us, it's about inclusion because we've created an inclusion index that we measure. We've actually included diversity scores in our corporate scorecards, so our bonus payout is now based upon that. We actually ask managers to create in their individual objectives every year a line item around what they're doing to make their team or themselves more inclusive. So making sure that you are driving that kind of accountability is really critical. And the last piece, if you're looking at driving this kind of change, is really to be intentional, persistent, and consistent in terms of the actions that you are doing to be able to do it. If they see, if you will, an initiative that is a one-time action and wow, look at what we did, and then nothing ever happens again, frankly, we don't make progress. So you have to be consistent on the behaviors.
Yeah, and Benita, I want to build on this, but also with that challenge that because you are global companies, many times large teams will never ever meet each other. And so leading from the top means maybe taking some different actions so people can see those examples.
Indeed. Well, I love what you just said, Derek. It is about doing well and doing good. It is about having the return that comes from doing the right thing. It's not just principle, it's action. And we do that by making sure that in addition to the leadership having accountability goals, every single MasterCard employee has ESG objectives now, each one. And it's not just a goal that they don't know what it means. It comes with specific actions that we ask each person to take to make an impact. And we do that in various ways. I'll give you one example, right? There are so many different topics. To your point about, technology can be scary and we have to bring everybody with us and we're all on different adoption curves, but we have to meet people where they are. And so that means whether it's the topic of cryptocurrency or blockchain or even just simple everyday payments, making sure we help people through where they are to get to where they need to be. An example is in India, right? We've helped move from cash economies to digital economies, even down to the vegetable vendor on the road who's accepting payment technology now. How did we do that? Well, we realized that not just getting them the technology, but how do they know what to do with it? WhatsApp is a pretty common denominator. And we just created some micro videos that helped them understand, what do I need to do with this? It's that easy. I can be part of this process and I can be brought into this technology. So it's about inclusive growth, it's about accountability, and it's about doing the right thing by doing well and doing good.
We are under our final 2 minutes now. So very, very quickly, I said we wouldn't have a lightning round, but I do want to get a final thought from each of you of the big challenge that all companies should be looking ahead in the next few years. Of course, it's an uncertain economy. We have these workforce challenges. What are the big ideas that all companies need to be focused on in the next couple of years?
I'd say two things. One is we make a lot of brand promises.
Yeah.
I mean, we, the collective we, right? All companies go out there and make these amazing brand promises, but your employees are the keepers of those promises. So don't forget that whatever you say and expound on what you're going to be doing as a company and what the growth rate or what your expectations are, there are people that have to deliver against that, so make sure you take care of them. The second thing I'd say is that while rudimentary and simplistic, get back to basics. We've kind of overcomplicated a lot of things, and so getting back to taking care of our customers, doing what's well, doing good by doing well, and all of those things that go along with it, I'd say get back to basics.
Derek?
The Colgate brand is in more households than any other brand in the world, when you think about sort of category penetration for us. What's really important is for us to ensure that we are maintaining that by staying connected and aware of our consumers and the evolution of what their needs are, so that we can ensure that we are servicing their needs to ultimately deliver broader overall health as opposed to addressing any issue in a very, very narrow space.
Yeah.
All right,
I will just
Benita?
build on your very right point, which is in order to be servicing needs of employees or end users or our customers, it's about listening. There's so much information and there's so much noise, and we have to find our ways, always on, not just once a year in a survey, right?
Right.
To be listening to our employees for their needs and authentically addressing them and innovating to create creative ways to reach those needs going forward.
All right, Tiffani, Derek, Benita, thank you so much for sharing your insights this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Jobs Ohio's model gives our state a serious competitive advantage, and it's the only one like it in the nation. It's built with a unique combination of attributes: a private structure that has statewide reach, experienced economic development professionals, and an independent source of funding. That independent source of funding? It's not taxes. In fact, it's profit from the sale of high-proof spirituous liquor, and it's generated by Ohio Liquor. Ohio Liquor is a unique public-private partnership between the Ohio Department of Commerce's Division of Liquor and the Jobs Ohio beverage system, which we often refer to as the beverage system. We use a retail mindset and smart business practices to maximize profit and efficiency of the Ohio Liquor enterprise.
Please welcome to the stage Jobs Ohio Vice President of Strategy, Andrew Dye.
I'm happy to join you at this Bloomberg Growth Summit. My name is Andrew Dye, Vice President of Strategy at Jobs Ohio, Ohio's private economic development corporation. In an earlier chapter of my career, I actually lived not far from here in Midtown, working as an investment banker, a career path I chose for 8 years to build skills, experience, and global exposure. But in 2015, I felt a calling to move home to my home state of Ohio and join a special team at Jobs Ohio. The Jobs Ohio team was then and is now on a mission to become the leading economic development organization in the U.S., focused on economic development and prosperity. Now, that's a big claim, the leading economic development organization in the U.S. So let me set aside any Midwest modesty and lay out some facts from 2 time frames, the past 10 years and the past 10 months. So the past 10 years, our organization was founded in 2011, and since then, we've served over 3,400 companies on economic development projects. Who, you might ask, are our customers? About 25% of our customers are large cap companies, 50% of our customers are middle market, and a quarter are small businesses. 1 in 6 are international. But the common denominator across all of our customers is the search for a stable, profitable, and sustainable place to operate. And at Jobs Ohio, we bring resources to help companies understand the unique advantages of operating in America's Midwest, and specifically in Ohio, in our resilient, dynamic business environment. So coming back to the customer, we're a private sector organization, and we regularly measure customer success. through Net Promoter Score. And the data are clear. Over the past 5 years, we've had a Net Promoter Score above 70, and in the past 2 years, we've had a Net Promoter Score over 80 during the pandemic. When we give an incentive or provide a service to a company, we want to know what they think. And again, the data are clear, and we're here ready to serve more customers. So the past 10 months, I walked you through the past 10 years. What's happened the past 10 months? Well, this year, 2022 started with a major announcement in Ohio, Intel announcing it was going to build over $20 billion advanced semiconductor chip-making complex in central Ohio. They coined it the Silicon Heartland. And in September, and to quote Bloomberg, Ohio was upgraded to AAA by Fitch for the first time in its history, thanks in part to our state's fiscal leadership and the fact that our $750 billion economy is top 10 in terms of diversity in the country. So all of this success, working with the 3,400 companies across the spectrum of large to small, comes back to the video you saw at the outset, the unique partnership between the Jobs Ohio beverage system and Jobs Ohio. It's enabled us to invest over $1.2 billion in growth projects, unlocking over $70 billion of private investment. Think about that ratio. If you remember one thing from today about Jobs Ohio, is that we have a unique team focused on supporting companies from around the world looking to plant their flag in the Midwest. This is happening not by accident, but by design. We're just a short flight away, so whether you're looking for real estate, talent, or sites, we're here ready to serve you. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage AB InBev Chief B2B Officer Nick Catan, BlackRock Senior Managing Director and Chief Client Officer Mark McComb, and Citi Global Wealth at Work Managing Director and Global Head Naz Vahid with Bloomberg's Katie Greifeld.
Nick, Naz, and Mark, thank you for joining me. I don't know about you guys, this is just my second in-person panel since COVID. The other one I got COVID at, but that was a few boosters ago, so I'm feeling pretty good about this one. Our panel is about the art of anticipation. We were having a light debate about what that means backstage, but it's all about basically knowing your customers, your clients well enough, anticipating their needs. There is some daylight between AB InBev and BlackRock and Citigroup. So maybe a productive way to start would be just defining who you see as your customers, as your clients. Nick, let's start with you.
Well, first, good morning. Thank you for having me. So at AB InBev, we serve millions of retailers around the world, many of them small and medium-sized retailers outside of the United States. And we use technology to connect to them in a platform we call Bees. This is our proprietary digital e-commerce platform. It enables us to connect with those small and medium retailers and bridge not only a digital inclusion gap, but a financial inclusion gap.
All right. Mark, take it away.
Great to be here, and thank you for the invite. I'll try to be as concise as Nick was there. You know, BlackRock is a very young company, but grew very successfully with a very simple mission, which was to help more and more people experience financial well-being. So at our core, we are an asset manager, but we're a B2B asset manager. So we've always essentially worked through our institutional clients to the end client. And so, you know, whether that's 25 million Americans who are saving for retirement, we manage the pool of funds that create that pension plan. And so we count our clients as the biggest institutions in the world, from sovereign wealth funds to public pension plans to university endowments. And then on our wealth side, we partner with guys like Citibank as they seek to serve their clients by basically providing the building blocks through things like ETFs that allow people to get access to investment capabilities and investment products, and that allows them to build those retirement savings for the future.
First of all, I had COVID 3 weeks ago, so you're pretty safe.
Okay,
Sitting
cool.
next
You're
to me.
definitely safe.
Yeah. I run the Wealth at Work at Citi in the Wealth section, and what that means for all of you is that when you are a private company and you are a law firm or a professional services, you enter that market right out of a great school, you make a lot of money, and then you continue to make a lot of money. You tend to be really busy and pay very little attention to what you do. So our clients are all of those busy professionals from entry point all the way to managing partners and then retiring, who need total wealth management, whether that is investment, lending, commodity items like banking, and that is who we see as our clients.
And you were actually quoted in a Bloomberg article in August saying that we get them young and we keep them. I thought that was pretty funny. I liked that. So I guess so much of, knowing your clients is actually interacting with them. And again, to come back to COVID, we've been living in a pandemic for about 3 years now. So it's hard to have that conversation without acknowledging that. Over the past 3 years, how is the mode of interaction, and especially the first interaction, how has that changed?
I'd be happy to take that. For our business, it's really been a transformation from analog to digital. We serve millions of small retailers around the world, and many of their businesses still run on pen and paper, they still run in cash. And this is a very analog, physical business. And through technology and the launch of Bees, we've not only digitized our relationship with those clients, but we've digitized their businesses. This has enabled us to supplement our in-person interaction with them into a digital interaction, which enables us to know them better, know their businesses better, and open up many new avenues of communication and understanding them better and more deeply through data. So it's been a really dramatic transformation from analog to digital connection with our millions of retailers.
Take it away, Mark.
Take it away. I think of COVID the last kind of 3 years as sort of like a kind of spring being tightened and tightened and tightened. And, we all kind of, everyone is kind of, we can all remember where we were when the world started to kind of shut down as a result of this. And, as a financial services company, it meant that we, created kind of 18,000 home offices almost overnight, and then started to, interact with our clients on a very proactive basis. And I think, like everyone, we were kind of surprised at the degree to which productivity levels and processes all kind of worked pretty smoothly. And there was this craving of sort of staying connected, because you knew everyone was sitting in their kitchen or their living room and sort of trying to find ways to connect. And so that spring got wound tighter and tighter and tighter. And what's been kind of amazing for us is just, when you let the spring go, what then happens? I mean, the degree of almost emotional connectivity that's happening as we start to see clients again in person is quite extraordinary. I mean, I find myself, it's like you almost, when you see somebody, you're like, wait, we've like spoken 6 times but never met, is really quite extraordinary. So I think the world is kind of suffering a sort of quiet PTSD here, that as people sort of try to figure out, hybrid models, not hybrid models, 3 and 2, 4 and 1, all of this kind of thing. For us, that's still very much a work in progress, because we're trying to be respectful of the fact that, first of all, the world is not completely out of this, so there's still differences regionally. Secondly, that, you have different businesses within your business. We have a huge technology platform, and they're different in how they want to kind of be back in the office. But we fundamentally believe that at the end of the day, that we all have to get back together. That's what the human condition is about. We are pack animals at heart, and we love the interaction we have with our colleagues. And so I think ultimately that's how we will move. And I think then we sort of revert back to a lot of in-person, but being much more receptive to kind of the hybrid model as we go forward.
We're not lone wolves. Has that been your experience as well?
Pretty much the same. So I won't repeat all of what was said, but I will tell you that it was amazing when you went to Zoom, a lot of Zoom with your clients. You actually got to know your clients in ways that you didn't know them before.
You
They
could
were
see
in
their
their
dog
homes,
in
they
the
would see
background.
dogs, kids, all. And it created a type of conversation, sometimes deeper than you would if you were just sitting at a lunch or you were sitting in their office, and so they were in their office mode. And I do believe that a good banker has been able to carry that, into after Zoom life. I do agree that within the last 6 months, everybody was almost zoomed out. You were tired of having one after another. So we're welcoming the concept of getting in front of clients. But there is a tendency to want to do Zoom because it was easier, right? So you have to push both your employees and your clients to get together. We do think relationships are more solid. Conversations are a lot more real when you are in person with people.
So I feel like this is where the daylight between your industry and your two's industry is coming out, because obviously your client's very comfortable with that digital world. But Nick, to your point that it was the transition from analog to digital, tell us a little bit about the growing pains there.
Well, at first we weren't sure if our retailers would embrace technology as a way of interacting with us. But what we found very early was that they preferred it. So we learned that our retailers preferred to interact with us sometimes in times we weren't serving them. So in the past, we would physically visit these retailers, as many B2B companies do. But now we interact with them digitally, and we find that nearly half of our retailers prefer to interact with us outside of normal business hours. So there was an immediate acceptance and take-up from our clients in interacting with us this way. But we also learned that this opened new opportunities for us. They also asked us to start serving them with not only AB InBev products, but they wanted to order other products through our platform. So we now have more than 200 partners that work with us in our marketplace e-commerce platform. And we've generated a business of nearly $1 billion of net revenue as a result. So we found that there was great acceptance from our retailers, but it wasn't all straightforward. We launched this year in Tanzania and Uganda.
Wow.
And in these markets, the availability of bandwidth and the cost of bandwidth is far more limited compared to many other markets. And so we had to tailor our offerings. We had to know our customers very deeply and meet them where they are, localizing our approach to their reality. And in Africa, that means adjusting our offering to be less intense for bandwidth. So we found great new opportunities for growth through this digital connection. We found a way to better serve our clients, increasing our Net Promoter Score by more than 10 points over the last couple of years. But we've also had to be very thoughtful about knowing our clients locally and adapting to their reality.
So also a moderator no-no, I didn't remind the audience, you can submit questions. I believe you scanned a QR code when you came in here, so feel free to do that. But so this transition to analog to digital, you walked us through some of the growing pains. I want to talk about some of the growing pains that you all are feeling now. Mark made the great point that we're still in this pandemic. A lot of companies are trying to figure out 4 or 1 day or 2 or 3 or what that actually looks like in terms of in the office. I mean, I'm speaking as a millennial. I love the hybrid setup. I mean, that has been the majority, not the majority, but the good half of my career. I unfortunately spent a lot of time on TikTok. I know Gen Z is never going into the office. And as we look forward to, a future where we are trying to figure out, hopefully in our post-pandemic world, what that looks like, do you anticipate trying to revert back to, primarily in person, or is this Zoom hybrid reality the future?
I think the answer is it's kind of both, right? I mean, it really does depend, and we were talking earlier on about how, if you look at the nature of different industries, they all have dynamics that are different. We have a massive technology business, and so that has a different component to it. But I think the things that we perhaps haven't talked about, and maybe financial services has a kind of unique lens onto this, is like, we're living through pretty unprecedented times in the world, whether it's kind of supply chain issues, wars in the war in Ukraine, inflation. And again, the question here is, a high-performing team can perform at a high level for a long time remotely. But when it comes to things like problem solving, when it comes to things like, getting the right, brains together to work on a problem and try and solve it, I just still see that it's kind of happens together. The fact of the matter is, I doubt Zoom was invented on Zoom, right? So it's all about getting people together to sort of problem solve. And I think, again, we're very fortunate in financial services because we actually didn't have, folks on the ground manufacturing or delivering or, part of the sort of supply chain. And so we were able to be remote much more easily. But I think we shouldn't kid ourselves that if we think that's the new normal, then I think we miss that opportunity to really create the connectivity. And this whole thing of the art of anticipation, I mean, that's what our clients mandate us to do, is like try to anticipate what's going to happen. What's the Fed's next move going to be? How are we going to think about inflation? What's going to be, the equity stories we need to talk about? And those just don't happen when everyone is kind of remote.
I will say, as a reporter, it's difficult to get the Pentagon Papers over Zoom. But I mean, in your business, where you're actually trying to court the younger, soon-to-be, hopefully very wealthy part of your business, and how do you anticipate the next decade looking there?
I think hybrid is the future, honestly. I don't think you're going to be able to go back to an all in the office. My generation grew up like that. That is how we learned from each other. And I do think there's two things to it. One is our bankers, our staff learning to become better at their jobs. And for that, some level of learning from each other is really important. And it's really hard to do that on Zoom. Sometimes you learn about how you position a situation by listening to somebody else around you say it. You lose that in Zoom. You just don't have that ability. I can even tell you the professional services we serve say that that's their biggest issue with their younger employees as well, because everybody thinks, well, I did my job while I was remote, so why do I need to come to the office? Yes, perhaps you did, but how much is it that you didn't learn because you weren't listening to somebody who's done this for 5 years, 10 years that you're missing? So I think what we're trying to do is meet the client where they want us to meet them. I will say the last 2 years of COVID in terms of digital has clearly said to us we have to become better at serving digitally. We need to serve the client if they want to connect to us at midnight, and that might mean digital, not a human being. But we also need to be able to do it at their location, in their office, or on Zoom if they so choose. So being able to do that, and Citi made a decision very early on, unlike some other financial institutions, that we were going to go the hybrid route. So far, it's worked. Let's see if it continues to work for us. So.
That does sound very dark if someone contacted me at midnight, unless it was Taylor Swift.
Online, not
Mark brought up supply chains, which is kind of catnip for me. I report on cross-asset markets for Bloomberg News. And I mean, I gotta ask, are we past peak supply chain? When can we stop talking about this as a buzzword?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. As the world's leading brewer, of course, we run a very global business that is very local as well. And we've seen over the past few years disruptions in the supply chain. I think that we're very proud of our advanced data and analytics capabilities that enabled us to weather this storm and plan better throughout these supply chain disruptions. Of course, it's something that we continue to work on and monitor. But I think we're very happy with how our business is positioned today.
Well, that folds nicely into what I want to talk about, which is the Federal Reserve. We had a meeting yesterday, another 75 basis point hike. Soft landing is still a phrase you hear a lot in terms of what's going to happen to the economy. But we know that recession fears are growing. We know that inflation is hitting all segments of the economy right now. And I'm curious what you all are hearing from your clients in terms of that, and what past periods in recession have taught you about how the mode of interaction, how those communications changed. Naz, I'd love to start with you.
I think that clients themselves are trying to understand what it means to their industries in terms of what is happening. This is unlike any downturn we've seen in most of our living times, even those who are older. So what you are seeing is people learning as they're acting. So what do you have to do? And then again, I looked at the art of anticipation, is the concept of what is it that the client needs in front of them in the next few weeks, in the next few months. I'll be very honest, today our clients are quite nervous. The idea of investing long term, it's a daunting concept to them, whether they're around their retirement or young. So it's meeting them where they feel comfortable. If right now you feel that you want to keep money in cash till you feel more comfortable about it.
Yield's pretty juicy right now.
Yeah, you know, you went from 0 to about 3% on a CD, right? Or a treasury at 3.5%. You might look at that. But long term, we all know that's not what you want to do. You want to be able to think long term and not time the market, if you would. So I do believe that we need to educate the client at the same time that we anticipate where the level of comfort is. They might be different than each other at the moment, and we have to help them. And frankly, they say the same thing to us. Professional services like consulting firms that are advising us tell us, get a little uncomfortable, because there might actually be an opportunity to innovate in a situation like this rather than sit and just answer the client the way they're ready to be answered.
And you have a pretty interesting perch because, again, you're dealing with young professionals. I would assume for most of them, this is their first full-blown recession, potentially, unless they, you know, had some experience with the GFC.
Absolutely. And I think there's fear. A lot of them changed jobs in the last few years, right? We saw a lot of attrition in the millennial generation. So they're a little nervous about having changed jobs and being in a new company. But truthfully, there is absolutely opportunities. If you look at the recessions in the past, there has been opportunities to create new fields, create versions of jobs and businesses that didn't exist before. And even in a same field, to do it in a different way than done in the past, whether it's a law firm, a consulting firm, or an accounting firm. So we're seeing managing partners listen to their younger generation a little more, because they want to make sure that they're serving the client with understanding what the younger generation anticipates and wants from them.
And Mark, would you say there's that same level of anxiety among the clients that you serve?
Yeah, look, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. The number one concern that every capital allocator or capital owner has at the moment is inflation. And the reality is that no one's experienced it for a very, very long time. So the consequences of inflation are so widespread. And of course, you know, you talked about the Fed, and it's like, yeah, but like the Fed didn't get it exactly right last year. So I mean, what necessarily gives us
transitory.
the transitory word? We've not even mentioned it, but it's you know. So I think the question of the Fed will do what it has to do. Like I think, you know, the messages out of yesterday are kind of consistent with this kind of whatever it takes sort of mentality. And by the way, I think that's actually right. I actually worked part of my career in Turkey when they still had very high inflation, and it is extremely debilitating to an economy. It's extremely debilitating to people's finances, and it creates all the things that we were talking about in terms of, you know, uncertainty and fear of the future and so forth. And our frame of reference, of course, to yields is like, well, we've been used to 0, now you can get like 3-4%, like that sounds and feels good. But we're not seeing the other side of it, of course, which is that, you know, the cost of living is going up, you know, abilities to get mortgages. We've not even talked about the energy crisis that puts a whole different level of anxiety into the system. So I think the Fed is right to be laser-like focused on this, even if they didn't get it quite right last year. I think that let's cut them some slack to hopefully get it right this time. But I do think ultimately what we're going to see, and maybe it's, I wouldn't time it, but I think ultimately we see things start to be deflationary again, because as things get sorted out on the supply chain side, you know, Europe seems to have stockpiled energy to get through the winter and so forth. So I think we'll maybe start to see some deflationary pressures that hopefully then, you know, settle us back to whatever new normal looks like.
Well, you're a very generous man. I talk to a lot of people who are upset with the Fed right now. But Nick, I gotta say, I don't envy you. We already went through some of the supply chain challenges that you're dealing with. What has the conversation with your retailers been like when we think about this very high inflation? In the US, the hottest inflation in a generation. It's a similar picture around the world. What do those conversations sound like?
Yeah, I think inflation, of course, we're not immune from inflation as a business, and it has implications not only for our input costs, but we think a lot about our consumers, because ultimately consumers and their demand for our products is who we serve on a day-to-day basis. What we found is that beer is a very resilient category. So people like to have a beer. We talked a lot about Zoom. People used to have beers over Zoom. Thankfully, now they're having beers in person. So beer is a resilient category. We pay very close attention to our consumers, and so far we've seen very robust continued demand for our products. So we're very fortunate to be in such a resilient category. We also, as a global business, are not new to inflation. We have big businesses in Brazil, Argentina, South Africa, and so we feel well positioned to sort of navigate through the inflationary environment as a business.
So we have an interesting amount of time left, about 1 minute and 45 seconds. Let's do a lightning round really quick. I want to hear from each of you what you expect to be your biggest priority in 2023. Maybe in a year we can talk about how that changed, but Naz, let's start with you.
Talent, retention of talent.
Yeah.
Delivering income to our clients.
Love it.
I think for AB InBev, it will be to continue to lead and grow our category through this environment, being with our consumers. And for me personally, it will be to continue our digital transformation with our retailers, enabling our partners, more than 200 partners, to sell through our platform as a new business line for us.
That was actually the most efficient lightning round I've ever done. This has been great. Thank you guys so much, Nick, Mark, and Naz. I wish you all the best of luck in 2023, and thank you for taking the time to come hang out with us actually in person.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, we're going to take a little break. I'm still, that whole idea of beer as a resilient category, I'm kind of settling with that. Take a break. We don't have any beer, but we do have some coffee. Please stretch your legs a little bit, but do come back at 10:45 a.m. sharp. We're going to continue our program. Thanks everybody. No beer, I know. It's still early, it's still early.
Some people call me the space cowboy. Yeah. Some call me the gangster of love. Some people call me Maurice. 'Cause I speak of the pompatus of love. People talk about me, baby. Say I'm doing you wrong, doing you wrong. Well, don't you worry, baby, don't worry. 'Cause I'm right here, right here, right here, right here at home. 'Cause I'm a picker, I'm a grinner, I'm a lover, and I'm a sinner. I play my music in the joker, I'm a smoker, I'm a midnight toker. I get my loving on the run. Ooh. Ooh. You're the cutest thing that I ever did see. I really love your beaches, want to shake your tree. I lovey-dovey, lovey-dovey, lovey-dovey all the time. Ooh, yeah, baby, I sure show you a good time. 'Cause I'm a picker, I'm a grinner, I'm a lover, and I'm a sinner. Play my music in the sun. I'm a joker, I'm a smoker, I'm a midnight toker. I sure don't want to hurt no one. People keep talking about me, baby. Say I'm doing you wrong. Well, don't you worry, don't worry, no, don't worry, mama. 'Cause I'm right here at home. You're the cutest thing I ever did see. I really love your peaches, wanna shake your tree. Lovey-dovey, lovey-dovey, lovey-dovey all the time. With the darkness on the street and the houses filling up with light. Between the stillness in my heart and the roar of the approaching night. Somebody's calling after somebody. Somebody turns the corner out of sight, looking for somebody. Somewhere in the night. Tender is the night when you hold your baby tight. Tender, tender are the motions. Tender is the night. Between the life that we expected and the way it's always been, I can't walk back in again after the way we fight. Just outside, there are people laughing, living lives we used to lead, chasing down the love they need. Somewhere in the night, tender is the night, and the benediction of the neon light. Tender, tender are the hunters, tender is the night. You're gonna want me tonight when you're ready to surrender. Forget about who's right when you're ready to remember. together. And in the hard light of an angry sun, no one remembers what was said or done. Tender are the words they choose. You win, I win, we too tall, could've used a few pounds. Tight pants points, hollering out. She was a black-haired beauty with big dark eyes, and points all her own, sitting way up high. Way up firm and high. Out past the cornfields where the woods got heavy. Out in the back seat of my 60 Chevy. Working on mysteries without any clues. Working on our night moves. Trying to make some front page driving news. Working on our night moves. In the summertime. In the sweet summertime. We weren't in love, oh no, far from it. We weren't searching for some pie in the sky song. We were just young and restless and bored, living by the sword. And we'd steal away every chance we could, to the back room, to the alley, or the trusty woods. I used her, she used me, but neither one cared. We were getting our share, working on our night moves, trying to lose an awkward teenage blues, working on our night moves. And it was summertime. Sweet summertime, summertime. Oh, wonder.
Please take your seats. The program is about to begin.
Waiting on the thunder.
Please take your seats. The program will begin now.
I woke last night to the sound of thunder. How far off I sat and wondered. Started humming a song from 1962. And it's funny how the night moves, when you just don't seem to have as much to lose. Strange how the night moves, with autumn closing in. Night moves. Night moves. Yeah. I sure remember the night moves. And I'm funny how you remember.
Please take your seats. The program is about to begin.
Working and practicing all of the night moves. Night moves. Oh, I remember. Yeah, I remember. Ooh, I remember. Lord, I remember. Lord, I remember.
Please take your seats. The program will begin now. Please welcome to the stage Bank of America's President of Retail Banking, Holly O'Neill.
I got a promotion. No, just kidding, just kidding. It's the world we live in. You got to be flexible and adaptable. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a cup of coffee, beers later on. Got another polling question. You ready for it? Yeah, let's do it. A little bit louder? Yes. All right, come on, come on. All right, what is the most important component of your long-term growth strategy? And we got a couple of options. Leveraging innovation and technology, prioritizing customer loyalty, and satisfying concerns of sustainability. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to weigh in on that. I have to say, whenever we have a leader on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg TV, on Quick Take, these are the kinds of things that come up constantly. We talk about technology, and when you have to decide, are you spending on technology, are you spending on workers? I mean, these are the things and the decisions that people are making. People often will say technology is front and center. They've got to keep spending on it. All right, so what is the most important component of your long-term growth strategy? Yeah, technology's coming in at 44%. Customer loyalty, you can see there at 35%. So it really is so much about tech, which is a great setup for the next conversation. So I do want to welcome to the stage, because they're going to talk about consumer service and growth in particular. Please welcome to the stage Camilo Durana, Executive Vice President, Club Services and Fan Development at Major League Soccer. Horace Kahn, VP of Operations Services at Chipotle Mexican Grill. They're going to be in conversation with the amazing Taylor Riggs of Bloomberg Television.
High five as we walk by. Thank you, gentlemen, so much. It's so great to be here. And I'm really excited as our panel when we think about what is the driver of customer success, and particularly within the leisure sector. Two things I'm a fan of, Chipotle and soccer. So this is really such a treat.
Great mix. Yeah.
Camilo, let me start with you. I want to ask you both sort of the same question to kick us off. How do you approach the customer? How do you think about acquiring, retaining, keeping that customer? For you, what is sort of that key component?
Sure. We are obviously a professional sports league, so fans engage with and consume our product in a variety of ways. They'll come to our stadiums, they'll watch on television, they'll play fantasy, they'll watch highlights on the go. So across all this, we take a very fan-first approach, and we focus on fan needs, those of our core fans and those of the fans that we would like to become fans. So it touches on things like the quality of product, what we actually have on the field, what it looks like on television. Do we have the right camera angles? Do we have the right lighting? We look a lot at the quality of experience, what the stadium atmosphere is like, how consumers feel leaving our venues. And we also look at emotional connections with clubs, which is a big driver of why people go to games. But at the core of all of this, we firmly believe that if we can meet the needs of our fans, we'll continue to grow and be successful.
Yeah, I totally agree. And for Chipotle, you know, we have two guests, if you think about it. There's one who's coming through the line and purchasing product, and then there's another one who's serving those folks who are coming in the lines, who are our team members in our restaurants. And for us, it's about creating that seamless team member experience, whether it's through leveraging technology or introducing streamlined processes or systems or tools, so that we can truly create that frictionless guest experience, which is essentially going to be serving fresh, high-quality product, leveraging culinary tactics in a quick, efficient way for our guests to be able to get their product.
Both of you have mentioned technology throughout some of those answers. And Horace, I want to do a follow with you, because in our conversations backstage, you said that there's a big difference between adding technology for the sake of it, it's a buzzword, it sounds really cool, versus value-add technology.
Yeah.
What is value-add technology for you?
Great question. Yeah, the two buzzwords are technology and innovation,
Yeah.
right? Everybody's saying those today, but what does that mean for Chipotle? There's a number of initiatives that we are testing currently that's aimed at really streamlining the back-of-house team members' experience. So for example, if you think about some of those manual processes in restaurants today, those repetitive tasks like frying chips every single day, how is it that we can leverage automation to help and assist with that? So we're testing Chippy, right, in one of our restaurants in Fountain Valley in Southern California. where this robot, if you will, is going to serve as an assistant to fry the chips for the team members so that they can then focus on those other culinary tactics or tasks in the restaurants.
So instead of a robot replacing a person, it's freeing up the person to be in interaction with the customer.
That's exactly right. We're freeing up the team member to be where the customer's at. You're never going to see a robot replace somebody on the front line, right? You're always going to want to have that one-on-one interaction. But the more you can streamline for the team member, the better experience they will be able to serve for our guests.
Camilo, when you talk about technology, you said the camera angle's in the right place. You've also had a huge announcement in the last few months in a partnership with Apple.
Correct.
If you're not on a streaming service, you're no one. That's what we keep hearing. What does Apple bring you? What do you bring Apple?
You know, we're bringing one of the best soccer leagues in the world, and we've made a lot of progress in our 28 years. But Apple's bringing technology that really is going to make it easier for fans to access our product, to watch our games, to watch content. We announced in June a 10-year partnership, and we're working alongside them, not to build robots, but to build a streaming service that will be accessible with a single subscription. Every single Major League Soccer game will be accessible, along with MLS Next Pro, which is our development league, MLS Next, our academy league, and a new tournament we're launching with our partners at Liga MX, the league in Mexico. It's a single subscription, available worldwide, no blackouts. And so if you think about the fan experience, if I'm a New Yorker and I travel to Argentina or France, often sports fans have to look for who is broadcasting my team locally, if they're broadcasting. And so I think the idea of having a single place where fans can go to watch our games is really exciting. And to your point, our fans are already there. 83% of Major League Soccer fans are already streaming live sports on a weekly basis. So we're really excited to provide that service and think about new opportunities as well. We're the most diverse league in the world. We have players from 82 countries. So the idea of delivering every single match and having fans around the world follow their favorite players from their geographies is exciting for us.
So you said a few things in there. One was when you think about accessibility, meeting the customer where they are. The NFL owns a day of the week. You can't think of another sport that has a full day. How do you penetrate that? And then you also talked about blackouts. We can't watch our Niners when we're here in New York. So how do I watch the team that I want and it's available no matter where I am?
Sure. You know, you're talking Sunday. The NFL owns Sunday. And that didn't happen overnight. If you think about it, it's about building rituals and habits and having people wake up on Sunday mornings and know exactly what they're going to do, because it's almost habitual. And the challenge for a lot of growing sports leagues is the days in which they play and the kickoff times are often dictated by available TV windows. And so you end up playing one week on Saturday at 7 p.m. and then the following week you play at Wednesday at 9 p.m. as an example. And it's really hard for fans to follow and build those rituals and build those habits. So with our Apple partnership, we now have more control over our schedule. We're going to focus a lot of our live matches on Saturday nights and hopefully start to build those habits and those rituals that'll deliver us what we hope would be ownership of Saturday nights. We certainly aspire to get to what the NFL has done with Sundays.
Horace, a similar question to you. We think about consistency. We think about a customer that wants to know what they can get when they want it. That sort of lines up with where you are when you think about providing consistency for the customer. Except taking cauliflower rice off the menu, which we still need to have a conversation about.
We'll
you
touch
know
on
what
that.
you're gonna get when you go to Chipotle. How hard is that to maintain across thousands of locations?
You know, to obtain that level of consistency at scale across over 3,100 locations today, it's a challenge. And it starts with tackling the fundamentals. You know, recently we deployed a new initiative called Project Square One, which is getting back to the basics in our restaurants. Because it truly is just about that. Let's cut out all the noise. You know, in 2018, 2019, we were firing on all cylinders, and then the blip happened, right? Where over the last couple of years, folks had really just tried to pivot to do whatever they possibly could to survive or thrive in the industry. And so now you think about over the last couple of years, we've brought on about an additional 200 field leaders to oversee those restaurants. 90% of those were promoted from within, so they're brand new in their roles. We've had a number of new general managers at our restaurants. And we couldn't think of a better time to deploy this new initiative, tackling the fundamentals of the business, which is preparing and serving high quality, fresh culinary food, available 100% of the time from open to close, and delivered very quickly for our guests. And so to reach that level of consistency, you really had to just break it down and bring it back to those basics. And that's exactly what we're doing right now to be able to maximize that at scale.
I will say we're taking questions from the audience. If you guys have questions, please, I think, scan that QR code and we'll get some questions and make sure that we get those in and answered for you. In the meantime, talk to us about some of the inflationary pressures as well, because there is a soft balance. And Horace, I'll start with you, and Camilla, I know that we can talk about some pricing in different areas. How pinched is the consumer? Are they willing to pay a little bit higher prices, a lot higher prices? Do they push back? How do you know when the consumer is starting to push back and say, I'm sort of getting at the max in terms of the price increases, because you don't want to drive that customer away?
Yeah, you know, I don't know if we felt that last part as much, because we really do believe our value proposition is really strong, right? If you think about across the fast casual industry and even the grocery retail stores, right? Everyone's probably experienced anywhere from a 10 to 20 to 30% price increase over the last couple of years. And we've really had to do the same to help offset some of the price increase or some of the inflationary increases across commodities and even labor. But that average $9 to $10 chicken burrito filled with fresh quality ingredients that you can pronounce, all 53 of them.
Well said.
Yeah. Made with culinary tactics, served by real people who are truly purpose-driven. Customers feel that, and they experience that, and they're willing to pay that price. And so, you know, I get that there's a lot of pressure points placed on the guests. However, if they really do feel there's value in that product, which Chipotle offers, they're going to continue to come back for more so long as that experience is consistent.
We do have some questions. So I have a follow-up on you as well in terms of pricing and a million different clubs. So how do you do that? How do you measure your companies as brands? What are some of your metrics? That's a good question. When you think about as a brand, is it being known as Chipotle? Is it being known by the ingredients? Is it being known for being the only place where you can go to get a great soccer game? How do you sort of measure if the brand is successful?
You? Me?
No? We can take it.
Yeah, look, for Chipotle, it's really about being known for your product, being known for the high quality, fresh ingredients that your customers are going to be able to experience day in and day out. And it's also being known for being purpose-driven. You know, our mission is to cultivate a better world in all facets, not just from our team member experience or the people that we do bring on into the organization, but also to our farmers, how we're able to further support their needs and their wants so that we can ensure that we have an incredible ecosystem from farm to table, so to speak.
You have an interesting take on this because you're in a Major League Soccer as a brand, but you're different football clubs as brands.
Yeah.
And there are different audiences for each of those different football clubs.
Correct.
How do you do all of that?
Well, I think our secret sauce has been really building community in those markets. And if you think about professional sports, most of the cities where we play have multiple sports franchises, so you have to differentiate. We're also in a global sport, so we're competing with a lot of the leagues in Europe and South America and around the world who broadcast or stream into our territory. And our advantage has always been building community, building those emotional connections with fans. And teams do that by connecting to local culture, things that really matter to fans, and being in the community day in, day out. So we do measure a lot of how our clubs are doing from a brand perspective, brand health, and what fans feel about their favorite club.
That's awesome.
Is it bottom down? I like soccer, so I'm going to find a club in my area? Or are you making sure the strategy is, I love this person and this soccer player, therefore I'm involved in the club, and then therefore I love Major League Soccer?
We get fans from a variety of places. In a couple of weeks' time, the FIFA World Cup will kick off, and that'll take over this country. It'll take over Canada as well, where we have 3 clubs. And so we get a lot of sports fans or people that are just interested in following a country that that become introduced to a sport and they become fans, and then they may look to their local club and say, I'd like to follow it. We get a lot of people that come to us and say, I played EA FIFA, I played video games, and I learned about your teams and your clubs through that and became a fan. So there's no real sort of prescriptive way of how we're building the fan base. They come from different areas, but we're very mindful of where they're coming from and make sure we're serving them in ways that make sense at the right time.
I'd ask Horace a little bit of a question on some of the inflationary pressures. I know when you think about pricing, I know we don't want to go into the pricing of the Apple streaming deal that hasn't been announced yet, but pricing from an individual stadium, the tickets, some clubs are more successful than others. How do you then individual price to meet the customer, get as much as you can out of the customer, but not push them over the edge based on all the different pricing strategies that you have within your membership?
Yeah, with each club, they have their own market. They have different competitive sets, different pressures. But they also have diverse products. And if you think about a stadium experience, you can go in and a lot of consumers are willing to pay more for a premium experience. We have a lot of young fans that love standing up and singing it for 90 minutes, and they like standing room only sections. If you have time this Saturday, watch MLS Cup on Fox and Univision. There's a group called the 3252, LAFC is hosting, and they're incredible. Just tune in, you'll get what I mean. And so they have diverse products. The clubs that are really doing it well, especially in sort of difficult times, are the ones who are looking at pricing holistically. It's not just about the cost of entry and what the ticket costs. It's also the cost of a meal, the cost of parking, because for us, growth is also about retention, right? You don't want to turn people away. So they're very thoughtful about what it takes to get in, what the experience is like once you're in the stadium, and the hope is they walk away wanting to come back, and that's been very successful for a lot of our clubs.
If we can pull up that other question that an audience group submitted, and I think if I can remember it correctly, they're asking how you identify the customer and then pivot when you need to if the customer changes. You talked a lot about in COVID when you were just firing on all cylinders, and this was a customer that instead of in store was now demanding delivery. How do you know when to pivot, but also stay true to who you are?
Yeah, no, great question. Sometimes you're forced to pivot, right? And I think in the pandemic, prior to, we actually had set forth an initiative to install these digital make lines across the organization, which surprisingly paid off really well for us during the pandemic, where we essentially were having one kitchen operate and serve two separate businesses within the same restaurant, the frontline experience and the digital experience. However, we did not anticipate the increase in demand. Therefore, we had to truly understand the impact to the team members and ultimately the guests at the same time, right? On the front line, if you think about your experience, I'm sure every single person in this room has gone to a Chipotle. If not, you will following this conversation. If you think about it, you're never dealing with accuracy-related issues on that front line, right? Because you see what's going into your bowl or your burrito all throughout the steps, and you leave, and you're satisfied with your product because I'm sure it's going to be tasting incredibly well. However, now that you're placing the order digitally, you don't get to see that experience. You don't get to ask for a little bit of extra rice or a little bit of extra beans. You can select it through the app, but you don't have that level of confidence when you're physically there in the restaurants. And so being able to adapt to that is one thing for the guest, and then receiving that experience consistently is another. And for us, we really had to understand what is it that we truly need to do and work on to be able to build that muscle memory so that teams can execute on accuracy, on portioning, on speed, all the elements that they were already consistently performing on the front line.
Same question to you. How do you know your customer, and if the customer changes, how do you pivot while staying true to your core values?
We listen. We listen, and we focus a lot on those personal interactions as well, because I think as consumers want different things, I think being able to listen, being able to interact is vital to be able to ingest some of those pivots. We have a really good example in Atlanta United. It's owned by Arthur Blank, founder of the Home Depot, and he took a lot of sort of the beliefs and philosophies of the purpose of staff. And if you think about home renovation, it's a little bit intimidating, right? But their staff in those aisles, they're make it feel natural, and they make you feel very comfortable. And he took that and brought it to professional sports. So every single person, every employee of Atlanta United goes through 8 hours of training called welcome home. And it's all about building personal connections, building trust, and positive experiences. And so as things change, at least you're walking away with personal experiences and a feel good and a relationship, which ultimately you can turn into a dialogue and learning.
I love that.
I think that leads us nicely because we've talked a lot about the tech aspect of it, the pricing aspect, and now we can kind of fold into the people aspect of it as well. One of the people questions here that we're getting is a big focus of how do you build brands with women. When you think about sports, traditionally has been men, but women are full-fledged into it. You know, how do you sort of build your brand with them? And I think we can talk about the similar question with you, maybe more sustainability and key focus of what people are really asking you, but maybe start about your customer and a pivot maybe into being a more diverse audience.
Well, I think naturally soccer has a very diverse audience. We're one of the most diverse leagues in the world from an audience perspective. But we also have focused a lot over the years on this mantra, soccer for all. We want to be inclusive. We want people to feel welcome in our stadium environments, and we've done a lot of work to make sure that's the case. I mentioned earlier the group at LAFC, our Los Angeles Football Club, that sits behind the goal. They're called the 3252s. If you stand in front of it, it's a mix of men, families, pride flags. People bring their kids, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds. I was there a few weeks ago. And it really is consistent across the league. It's an inclusive, welcoming environment where fans belong.
Question you maybe more on a sustainability question. Is that what customers are demanding, or are you offering that because you're anticipating the customer in the future will want it?
I think there's a combination of both there, right? At our core, about, like I said earlier, cultivating a better world, we're really looking to see what we can do from a sustainability aspect across all facets, right? I talked a little bit about the farmers, that if you think about over the last 5 years, there's been a reduction in about 40% of farmers, more than there has been on gains. And if you think about the future of food and how can we responsibly help support not only our suppliers, but also our farmers, we're really thinking about what else is there that we can do? So we've committed, I think it's around $5 million over the next 5 years to try to help that next generation of farmers and cultivate that experience so that it can be taken into account not only from a sustainability aspect, but also growth mindset. And so that's just one area. Of course, on the other side, you know, in terms of how are you going to reduce the emissions across the board from not only on gas, but everything else, we also have tied those key metrics into actually our executive compensation bonuses as well, to really try to drive those elements even further.
We only have about 4 minutes left, so it's about two minutes for each of you. Do you have any sort of final thoughts, anything that you didn't get to say today that you want to? Or we didn't quite get a lot to the human aspect. You talked a lot about your welcome home, that training program to make sure that my first interaction with the security guard is the first sort of nice feeling that I get. How do you think about that, and is there anything else you want to add?
We're a league on the rise, right? We've been operating for not as long as some of our competitors in North American sports or some of the soccer leagues around the world, but we're an incredibly vibrant market. We continue to expand, not just at a top division, Major League Soccer, but MLS Next Pro, our now development league. And we've got a lot of tailwinds, which are really exciting. Number one, you know, the idea of a FIFA World Cup on home soil in 2026, which will be the ultimate stimulus package for our sport. But we're really excited about this partnership with Apple and be working with the top technology company in the world, one, to build a better product that's more accessible, but also the world of opportunities and really integrating with Apple products and services, and how our fans will experience going to a stadium with maps. More informed about what they can expect at the stadium, integration of Apple Pay, Apple Wallet, et cetera, et cetera. So we're really excited about the future, and I think, again, at the center of it is how we become a better league for our fans, because I think, in our opinion, that's the key to growth.
Well said. Love that. I think if there's one thing that I didn't talk about today, it's probably the most aspect of Chipotle, which is our people. Right? We truly are a people-driven, culture-driven brand. And you see that through the development and growth of our people. You know, I know Brian had touched on it during the earnings call.
Your CEO.
Yeah, Brian Nickel, our CEO. if you think about the opportunities that Chipotle has provided for people, it's truly incredible. We have a regional vice president who was just promoted into position, who started with the brand in 2009 as a crew member, who's now overseeing $1 billion worth of sales on an annual basis. He migrated from Egypt, and if you think about in Egypt, that's equivalent to the 4th largest economy there. His backfill was a team director who was also internally promoted, who migrated from Palestine, and who's now overseeing $200 million in sales. And then his backfill was an incredible female leader who's now overseeing $20 million worth of sales as a field leader. And so it's about that growth and development, and it's a true testament to the culture that Chipotle has really cultivated within our restaurant environment, our above restaurant field leadership teams, and of course our restaurant support centers across Newport and Columbus.
I think those are both really positive notes to end on. I learned a lot. I'm waiting until you own Saturday night. I'm rooting for you.
You're invited.
And you're
You're
going to
invited.
be owning all the burritos. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Please welcome to the stage Bank of America's President of Retail Banking, Holly O'Neill, and MetLife's Executive Vice President, Head of Global Business Solutions, Christine Poznansky, with Bloomberg's Caroline Hyde.
Oh, what a joy to do these events in real life, in the flesh, with women who have jetted in from New Jersey and from Boston this morning. So we thank Holly for getting up quite so early this morning to be here in front of you all, such senior executives, to have such an important, crucial conversation. Now, I'm glad to see you're all gazing up on stage at us at the moment, but if you happen to look down at your phone, we won't take it personally, because we want you to be hashtagging Growth Summit. We want you to be talking amongst one another about these crucial conversation on LinkedIn, whatever platform is your favorite. Please do get involved in the conversation, because I'm so excited for it. And thank you so much, both of you, for being here. And Holly, I'll start with you. Having been up and running much earlier than any of us, I'm sure the brain is fully fired up. I'm interested from your perspective on what really customer service means for you. Having been the president at the retail banking institution, serving on the executive committee, what are you telling your colleagues at Bank of America about the role that you feel, how important customer service is?
Yeah, well, first, Caroline, it's great to be here with you. I was up early, but now I'm really hitting my stride. So I will crater in about 2 hours. But so customer service for us means giving clients whatever they want in any channel that they want to interact with us in, whether it's digital, online, in a financial center, over the phone. It's really serving their needs however they see fit. And I joined the consumer business as head of client experience 6 years ago. So coming in to lead the retail bank, it gave me a really good foundation to get underneath what is the experience, how can we make it better, how can we constantly raise the bar, and even look beyond our four walls at what is making client experiences great for consumers.
And MetLife, it's an interesting relationship you have from a customer perspective, because we're all deeply anxious, I know I am, about your own personal finances right now, and this is a macroeconomic uncertain time, but MetLife, you have to be hand in hand with people around some of the most emotional times in their life. It's about life insurance, about family, about health. How do you have that nuance to the customer service?
Yeah, you're exactly right. At MetLife, really when we think about customer service, it has to start with our value statement and our value proposition. Always with you, building a more confident future. And while that statement applies across stakeholders, to our customers, always with you in our communities, with our associates, and even our shareholders, it's most resonant when it's talking about the customer. Because as you said, Caroline, what a customer is coming to MetLife for is a promise that we'll be there in those moments that matter most. And as we think about customer service, we really actually talk about it in terms of customer care. Because while we're often servicing a transaction, we're caring for that whole person. And sometimes we're caring for their families or loved ones that have just lost a person. So it really is, very, very similar to what you talked about in terms of meeting customers where they want to be met, but with a real nuance towards caring for the whole and building the relationship with that customer grounded in trust and empathy.
How do you then square this needs to be digitized with the human factor?
Yeah, so it's a constant balancing act, right? We talk all the time about delivering high-tech experiences when that's appropriate for transactional inquiries and when that's what a customer wants, with those high-touch moments that matter most, right? And often we think about it in two lenses. One is, what's the context of the need? The second is, where is that customer at personally, right? So some customers, regardless of the transactional type, are not comfortable doing something highly digital. They want to speak to the person. Others are very comfortable doing things digitally. But when we put the added lens on what is the interaction about, that's where I think we really have to find the right balance with, if it's something where they're looking for information and an in and out type inquiry is the best way to go. Often we see that that's digital.
Yeah.
But we find quite often as well, because of the nature of the work that we do, that we have people that are calling us, someone bought a life insurance policy, no one's reached out to us in 20 years, and then it's their child or their spouse saying, I know that my father or my husband had a life insurance with policy, what do I do next, right? So the whole idea of those personal trusted connections is so important for us, while we can digitize and automate the more transactional inquiries, right? We've got to be able to, exactly as you said, we need to be able to meet them where they want to be met.
Talking of digital, we want you to be part of this conversation. Please do send your questions via the app because we can integrate it within our conversation. But Holly, I of course, full disclosure, Bank of America customer here, using the app daily. And when I do go onto it, I'm quite often perhaps just bought something on Amazon. Perhaps I've just been downloading something on Spotify. I've had a very easy technological experience. How important is, therefore, the digital arm of when you're servicing me as a bank client?
The digital arm is critical and has just skyrocketed over the last decade. And I'm glad you mentioned those outside competitors, because we really look at the digital space as where the future is, supported by our physical footprint and our specialists. To your point, there are certain moments that you just cannot replace a person on the other side of the table. But digital is the key, and we look beyond financial services to set the bar for our teams. What are those great experiences? What is innovative out in the marketplace, even beyond financial services, to really set the bar for our teams to make a great experience for our clients digitally? Zappos comes to mind. I was talking with somebody this morning about Zappos and their great experience online. So we look everywhere. Apple, Amazon, Zappos, you name it, to really think about how we translate that into the financial space. So today, you can order a cup of coffee on your phone. It's there waiting for you. If you're from Boston, you're going to Dunkin' Donuts. If you're not, you're probably going to Starbucks. But it's there waiting for you the way you ordered it perfectly, right? So that's one example. Translate that into financial services. If you go on your mobile app, you can order foreign currency in the denominations you want. You can walk by a financial center, pick it up, it's ready to go for you. So that's our equivalent, not quite as good as a cup of coffee, but similar. So those are the experiences that are setting the bar for consumers broadly, and we're looking to meet and even raise that bar for our clients to make the experience as seamless as possible.
And I know Upwise, for example, the MetLife app, that is also about financial education, which is so crucial in these moments of concern, anxiety. Many people haven't, experienced a recession. I mean, we put 2020, the V-shape to one side, a recession for quite a while, and we all start to get worried. Are you about the learning experience as well as the relationship, ongoing conversation experience?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Caroline. It's about helping our customers by educating them, and as you talked about, Holly, ideally you want customers to be able to start in one place and be able to pick up seamlessly in another. Similarly, we're looking at how do we ensure that we are serving the customer's whole life and that we are there for them through those most important times, financial wellness being a key wellness, just as health and life and other wellnesses would be.
Holly, a lot of this must come down to talent. So when you're thinking about Dunkin's latest upgrade to its app, when you're thinking about Amazon and the like, and I liked how you call them the competitors out there from a digital experience, how much of an onus is it on you to have the right talent building the right product for you?
Critical. I mean, the talent is critical, not only building the digital properties and enhancing the experience, but then also our talent who are interacting with our clients, right? So while a client may come in and want to talk to a specialist, we're really driving towards a much more integrated experience so that those specialists are as equipped to talk about the digital advantages and what you can do, and really partner with the client to get them there. So not only is it innovative talent designing the experience for our clients, but then it's our own, employees who are having that dialogue with our customers every day. Because that integrated experience really is what's going to provide the easy path for them.
And Holly, of course, it's not always easy depending on what generation you're from. Gen Z are using their apps in a whole different manner with such sophistication vis-a-vis Gen X or older. And I'm interested, not to dampen Gen X, you're down with the kids too, but I'm thinking my parents who are just about persuaded to get onto WhatsApp, but is there how do you make sure that it's a one-size-fits-all experience here, or is it more then you need boots on the ground, then you need a Bank of America on the corner?
Yeah, no, it definitely is an experience that we are aiming towards all generations, all demographics. While the usage in younger generations is higher, we certainly see plenty of retirees, boomers, using our digital properties. They love it. My father does get Erica and Zelle mixed up a bit and calls it Zella, but beyond that, I mean,
I like Zella.
That's right, Zella is really good. But they are very equipped to use those digital properties. Education helps us, right? So some people may need more hand-holding than others, and really providing them the tutorials and the specialist support to get there is how we're approaching it. So, everyone comes at it a little bit differently, but we ultimately want to get them there because it is a much better experience. So, digital provides all sorts of benefits for the bank in terms of consistency and approach and scale, but from a customer perspective, it is just so much easier when you think of where we are today versus a decade ago. To deposit a check, you do not have to get into your car and drive to a financial center. You can do it on your phone. So we've come a long way. Those digital experiences are critical for a great user experience. And as you said, starting and ending in digital, off-ramping and on-ramping is really where we want to take it.
We've got an audience question, so thank you very much for being engaged. And they're asking Christine about how technology can drive innovation in customer loyalty, because a lot of the time it's about drawing people in, but then it's about ensuring that they stick with you. Certainly you said it's an ongoing relationship. Are you being innovative at the moment with MetLife to be able to ensure people stay and actually tell their younger generation to come to MetLife, their children, maybe entice their parents to do so, or indeed the person who lives down the street in their own culture, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously we're in a world where technology is key, right? And I was thinking, Holly, what you said about the talent in ensuring that we are bringing in people that represent the full customer base that we serve, how we look at bringing in that innovative talent in order to drive the new capabilities that we know customers are looking for. We do that in a lot of ways at MetLife. We have actually a dedicated fund set up where associates we try and draw on our associates. They know the customers best to come up with innovative ways in order for us to change how we're servicing customers. We also obviously are working on lots of ways to digitize the full end-to-end customer journeys. One of the things we're looking at now is we paused and took a step back to say, what are some of the most critical interactions that customers have with us, and how can we really understand what those moments are and how someone can seamlessly move through the process. So we're right in the midst of re-engineering our systems and our processes to be able to do that for customers while we're focused on...
How do you think that'll look? Can you give us any sense?
So if I think about it, for us, a moment that matters most in insurance is obviously a claim, right? And if you think about it, a customer likely would want to, for a simple claim, initiate that through a digital interaction. As the claim is processing, there's lots of ways to provide proactive statusing. Think of, the tracker on a lot of the apps that you talked about. But then there's also a lot of questions that people have throughout, as I talked about. When it's new to someone, it's making sure that we're coupling that with understanding that as this works through some of the digital channels, our customer care associates understand where it's at. And if a customer's calling, can see that they've just been on the app, that they've just done this, so that it's truly a complement.
Something's just happened.
Right, of that high-tech, high-touch experience. And that's really the work that we're focused on right now, so that, again, we can really be there for customers in the way that they want us to be there.
The rest of the executives at Bank of America, do they totally get it that in this environment, as perhaps we pull back a little bit, whether it's in whatever area of exuberance we've been within the market, they understand that we still really need to invest in innovation, particularly retail, client-focusing innovation on the digital front?
Right, they do. I mean, it comes from the very top with our CEO, and it's, our conversation every day, all day, is around where are we investing to get the biggest impact for our client, right? And really putting the client experience out there front and center, and having an honest dialogue about where we can get better and what we need to invest to get there. So, we've had very consistent investment in the digital space over the past decade plus, and that will continue because the bar is just continuing to be raised for that end-to-end digital experience, as Christine said. Keeping clients in digital where they want to be kept in digital, constantly innovating, making it a seamless experience. So, there are new technologies, new approaches, and the consumer is always changing.
Yeah.
Right? So their expectations are changing, and we have to change along with them. So that continuous, consistent investment in technology will absolutely continue for us. And from a cultural perspective, our leadership team is committed to that, but at the same time, we're also committed to having that honest dialogue around the customer. And, at big companies, I'm sure you face the same thing. You have processes and multiple units across the company, but you really have to boil it down to what this meant for the client in order to get to the right target state.
Yeah.
And that has certainly been an active dialogue for us as a team.
It dovetails nicely into another audience question, so thank you very much for those who are virtual and here in real life. They're saying that you are two very well-established companies and brands. The major growth coming in the next 5 to 10 years, is it therefore, Christine, investment in technology? Is it about ensuring the loyalty of the people you already have, or is it about driving growth outside, bringing in new customers through a digital experience?
I think it's both, right?
Yeah.
So we want to deepen the relationships with the customers we have. And as you said, in our U.S. market, it is largely a B2B business. And how do we ensure that we are, for our existing customer base, continuing to provide the offerings, differentiating ourselves from a customer delivery perspective to be able to deepen those relationships while naturally growing new relationships. We have a very strong presence in the large market, but how do we get an equally as large market share in some of our middle and smaller markets.
And is that around marketing as well? How are you thinking? There's always that snapping at the heels idea of fintech and these new kids on the block coming in with app-only offerings, no boots on the ground, no bricks and mortar. Is that the competition? Is that the fear of where the growth goes to? Or is it actually more keeping your clients and expanding how they use your products?
It is both, as Christine said, right? And core, everyone is a competitor to us. We look at everyone, right? And we learn across the board. But the marathon here is having a great experience for your existing client base. And we do business with 1 in 2 households across the country. So we have a very big client base. We have to drive that satisfaction, the experience to higher levels and continue to grow those relationships. So it is very much a relationship-based strategy. That being said, you always have new entrants to the market. You have younger clients and you want to be innovative and current and modern for them to ultimately deliver a great relationship value for those clients as well. So it is twofold, but it really comes down to having a great experience. And for us, very much a relationship-based model versus, counting on the next biggest transaction. It really is having a long-term relationship with those clients.
And both of you have spoken very eloquently about how you need the right talent on board to do that. How are you using, Christine, the team that you have at the moment to keep driving the innovation, to keep thinking holistically about a customer?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I've led customer service teams kind of throughout my career in different companies, and I'm not doing that currently at MetLife, but the customer service, the teams that face off with our customers, both in our call centers that talk to our end customers, as well as in our service organization that supports our group customers, the companies, in so many ways, they know the customer best, right? They talk to them all day, every day. And we involve those teams in the largest transformation programs we have around designing customer experiences, right? So we very much focus on what is it that we are looking to design and build end to end, and how do we ensure that we're bringing that perspective. And if I think about some of the companies that we service in our group business, they represent just about every industry. So you talked earlier, Holly, about, in reality for us, our benchmark, and we know customers look at the last best experience they have is our new minimum standard, right? So we have a built-in feedback loop through these customers and our service associates that support them around what it is we should be focused on. So we do include them in a lot of our design thinking, in the transformation programs that we're working on, and they're there alongside through the whole process, anything that we're doing in terms of driving new experiences, new digital experiences, new customer-facing experiences for us.
We've only got a minute left. What, for each of you, is another company outside of your sphere who you've had a great customer service experience with recently?
I love Nordstrom. I think,
True that. I like that too.
It's great. And it's the simple things for me. It's great experience when you walk into those stores. They treat you like an individual as they walk around the counter and hand you your bag. And it feels like a very personal experience, even though you're one of millions of clients. So I love that connection that they make with their client.
Christine?
Yeah, and it's initially the first company that popped to mind was Neiman Marcus, and for the very similar reasons, right?
We're agnostic here to all
you
these
have someone that I typically work with there, so there's that. But if I think more kind of broadly and not specific to myself, I still think Zappos. I know you referenced Zappos. Zappos is a great company. Whether it's they were one of the first out with the free shipping and return. I feel like you can call them and say, I messed up, and it's like literally the idea of the customer is always right, and how you can seamlessly go from doing something online if you have to talk to them on their call center. It's just such a holistic experience. And I still feel like they're a company. I had the chance to visit their headquarters a couple years ago. I still feel like they're a company that just gets it.
One thing that you're really proud of in the last week or so from a customer service perspective?
So, do you want me to go first, Holly?
Sure.
I would say, so we actually just celebrated Customer Service Week. Actually, it was probably a couple weeks ago. And the pride that, so we listen to calls routinely all the time, right? All the way up through our ELT. The pride that those individuals have in how they deliver for customers, there's nothing like it to me than to get out to those sites and be energized by it. So I'd have to say it's our front-facing teams.
Yeah, I don't want to repeat. That certainly is top of my list, because that's grassroots. Those are the boots on the ground that get it done. But I think what makes me most proud is when I get a note from a customer that talks about the service from one of our frontline teams. So a customer who's taken the time to find my email, to give praise to somebody. And I do get those every week. And that takes a lot, and I think it speaks volumes for the front line. So that's really where you can sit back in your chair for 30 seconds and enjoy it.
I feel good about
That's right.
Congratulations, both of you. And, well, thank you for bringing your anecdotal evidence, but also what you wake up every day thinking about to our audience here. Thank you also, audience, for your questions. Please give it up for Holly and for Christine.
Please welcome to the stage Shopify Vice President of Product, Arpan Podduturi, Electronic Arts Senior Vice President and Group General Manager, Samantha Ryan, Barclays U.S. Consumer Bank Chief Marketing Officer, Lily Tomovich, with Bloomberg's Anurag Rana.
Have to get comfortable here first.
Move around a little bit. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Welcome to Bloomberg. What I wanted to do was start off with a little bit of an introduction of yourself and your current role, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So my name is Lily Tomovich. I'm the Chief Marketing and Experience Officer at Barclays Bank. I am leading, obviously, as you can imagine, most marketing functions, really focusing on how do we pivot to be a more agile, nimble marketing organization, but most importantly, leading a real customer experience transformation for Barclays. And so that's a commitment we have from the top down, bottom up, to really drive better customer and guest experiences for us at Barclays across the bank and actually across the world. It's a large global initiative. So happy to be here, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. Samantha.
I'm Samantha Ryan, and I am an SVP and Group GM at Electronic Arts. And I run developers. I run studios that spend months and years building the experiences that our players spend billions of hours in every year.
Great. Arpan?
Arpan Podduturi. I've been at Shopify for about 5 years. My role is leading our offline commerce business. So most people think of Shopify as an e-commerce provider. We have a large and growing offline business of brick and mortar stores, and so helping offline retailers come online, our online retailers expand to offline, and sort of bringing that all together in an integrated way.
Thanks. And my name is Anurag Rana. I'm a technology analyst with Bloomberg Intelligence, which is Bloomberg's in-house research arm, and I research large cap technology companies. So one of the things I've been thinking about this a lot since the panel topic came. If I go back, 10 years when Microsoft used to launch Windows, every next day you'd find out it has bugs, and the new things would show up. But I think one of the biggest launching that Satya did after becoming the CEO had something called a Windows Developer Program there, where they had massive feedback from thousands of developers before even the Windows went out. And that was probably the first time I saw Windows didn't have that massive hiccups. So I think what we're talking now is in line with a concept where when you're developing a product, How is it that you get customer feedback, and at what stage, and how do you use that iterative process to make sure it's it's pretty robust, to say the least, and is the right thing for the customer? Samantha, you want to tell us, because you have one of the most complicated products out there, which takes years to build.
Yes, it absolutely does. And our audience, our consumers, are really, really diverse. About 2/3 of all folks in the US play games on a regular basis, and they spend about 13 hours a week engaged in our products. So you don't spend that kind of time with something unless you're really deeply engaged. So we do use a lot of data analytics and telemetry to ensure that we are creating the right experiences for our players. We want to know where they're going, what are they doing, what characters, what storylines are resonating with them, what activities are they engaging in, and we can tune that to really match their experience that they desire. We'll oftentimes cohort using sort of behavioral psychology techniques our players into groups of motivation. So some players, they will play to socialize, some will play to improve their cognitive function, others play to simply escape. So if we can understand the motivations they have, then we can deliver the best experience for them. And also, in addition to telemetry, because it is entertainment, so it's soft, squishy, and hard to guess what's going to work, we use a lot of qualitative feedback as well, particularly with what we call our super fans, where we will have conversations with them and we will ask them, what is it that you're seeking out of this experience? And then we marry the qualitative and the quant together, and that is how we engage our players.
And Lily, from my point of view, the product that you have is so different than what Samantha creates.
Yeah.
And in that case, I mean, I have a few banking apps, and some of them are intuitive, some of them are not. What do you do when you're developing that product, and what's your feedback mechanism there?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is, for us, the digital, so the mobile app and the website are obviously the most important. So for Barclays, for example, 97.5% of all of our interactions happen within digital channels, right? So a very small percentage are still using traditional channels like phone. And so for us, the good news about that is we are able to really look at data, information, get signals. We use social. Social actually is a great platform for us in terms of picking up signals that there's potentially an issue with a login with our Gap portfolio, or maybe American Airlines has an issue with the rewards. So certainly social is an area, but what we've moved to probably in the last 12 to 4 months is to really look at leading indicators and not so much lagging indicators. So we have, when we launch new credit card portfolio products with some of our big important partners, we usually have large command centers, and we get real-time data. And so we know exactly what's happening on the phones, through our website and our mobile app, and we're able to aggregate information so we understand, wait a minute, there's something happening right here. The login rate has dropped below our threshold. And so we're, bank, lots of data, but really moving towards real-time KPIs and metrics so that we can be reactive as opposed to all of a sudden we get 10,000 calls into the call center. Oh no, there's something that's gone down on the mobile app. So we're trying to get ahead of that. With our data. And then, of course, Samantha mentioned qualitative when we're going into market. And we can talk about that a bit more later, but we too have lots of existing customer cohorts that we go to specifically as our test group, et cetera, so that we can get really good feedback before we push the first use case into the market.
Fair point. Arpan, I've covered Shopify for so many years, and frankly speaking, a few years ago when I heard about the point of sale product, I was a bit surprised. They said, that's a product for, of the yesteryears. Why would Shopify want to do that? Because it's a digital-first company. So perhaps give us a little bit of history of how your group was just even formed, or how did it come around? And then again, the second part of that would be, what do you do in terms of customer feedback when you're developing your product?
Yeah, so I think for our merchants, they're always looking at the channels that they can find the most customers. Physical retail happens to be the biggest sales channel in the world, right? And so they're looking for a solution that helps them integrate their online, their offline. We also have partnerships with Google, with Meta, with Pinterest, and Snap, and all the way down the line, so that merchants can really find buyers everywhere, and they have one inventory, one bird's eye view of their business. The point of sale business was kind of rebuilt 2 years ago. Since then, merchants have really taken to it for a number of reasons. Offline merchants obviously needed to get online during the pandemic, and Shopify was really at the forefront of that, so digitizing Main Street. The second is there's just a huge shift in online advertising, and with the changes around privacy, the customer acquisition costs have just increased so much that many online retailers are looking at physical retail as a really attractive channel to grow customer LTV, to build those long-term relationships. And so our product really has helped with that. On kind of building product, we do a lot of the things that I think the other panelists have talked about. I would say, we have too much data. I think everyone just has too much data. And so the guidance that we often take is just being really focused about who you're building for, giving the team permission to kind of focus on one customer, one idealized hero merchant, and working with them really closely. And so we do that. We partner with the most progressive merchants that we can find. And part of our job is really just predicting the future and getting all of our merchants there as quickly as possible. So while we use data and we have tripwires around and SLAs and all the things that I think every modern organization needs to have, a lot of it is just focusing and getting the team to be able to block out a lot of the noise and focus on one customer and build for that customer.
And I would just add to that, it's really about, all organizations, I think it's fair to say, struggle through this. It's finding the metrics that really matter, right? Because to your point, it can be analysis paralysis. Sometimes, the data comes in front of me and guys, like, what are the 4 or 5 most important pieces of information we need to be looking at to really deliver the right experience and find the pain points and the buzzkills? And you can get lost in the data, and so I think that's so critically important.
Samantha, I have a follow-up for you from the gaming point of view, because it does take several years to develop one. Is your approach different if you are developing a brand new game versus if you are kind of upgrading an old one? To say, how do you go about it? What's the process on that?
It's changed quite a bit, especially as games have become a lot more complex. In the old days, it was pretty common for us to go about 90% of the way through development before we would bring in players, but that could be 3, 4, maybe even 5 years. It could be tens or hundreds of millions spent, and then you don't really know whether that product is going to engage. So in complex projects, in particular those that are highly social, that have a lot of innovation, newer products or bigger reboots, we're now bringing our consumers in, I'd say about 20 to 30% of the way through development. So that's a big shift. And the good news for us in the game space is that our consumers are highly educated and savvy about our industry. So they really understand that when they come in that early, they may be seeing product that is very unfinished, that doesn't look anything like the final product, that has bugs, that might be difficult to use. And they have proven that they're okay with that because they want their voice to be heard. It's an extremely passionate audience that has high engagement. If their voice is heard, then we can really serve their needs better. So we haven't had any problems recruiting. If anything, it's hard to keep folks out from these early experiences.
And in the same vein, you probably have applications or online ways of entering a website that has going on for years. How do you keep up with the constant upgrades of that?
It's a little similar to what Samantha said. So if it is I'll call it a minor change, obviously it still goes through some user testing to make sure that it's meeting the needs and expectations, and from a front end and back end and end to end, everything works. You're not tripping up a system as you're making that change. But more so and more so because Barclays on the consumer side is very much a partner-focused brand. So we run a lot of the loyalty programs for brands that you would know and love, and certainly their credit card programs, whether it's JetBlue, American, Lufthansa, Emirates. We run their credit card program. And so we work actually really closely with our partners when we're developing our products, features, and functions so that we can make sure that we're understanding their customer needs as a frequent flyer, potentially, or an elite frequent flyer, and then also our most valuable customers. And so we, again, get feedback very early on in the process. I think Samantha said, 20, 30% of the way through the product development. I would say we're very similar. We have a innovation lab where we really practice, consumer-led design thinking, and that's really about bringing that process much in earlier than we would have done 5-10 years ago.
Got it. And Arpan, one of the examples I remember is during the pandemic, Shopify did innovations at a massively fast pace from, buy here, pick up from a neighbor, and POS stuff. Perhaps take us to a little bit of that journey as to how that happened and how did you make sure that this product is going to work and not. I mean, I also remember one that utilized GPS functions to figure out how to distribute flowers and all that other stuff in a neighborhood. I mean, it's been remarkable what I've seen it, but would love to get from the background of how that happened.
Yeah, I mean, during that time, we really felt like we were uniquely positioned to help a lot of people. One of the things that we're really proud of is during the pandemic, our brick and mortar retailers shifted the majority of their sales to online, and actually their business just didn't really miss a beat. And so we felt like we were able to save a number of main streets all over the world. I think the message just came from our CEO, Toby, and it just felt like this was a time that the world needed us, that businesses needed us, that SMBs were really looking for help. And so we lowered the quality bar for a brief period of time so we could get as much out as possible. And I think it is sort of the way that Shopify thinks about product development. Like, we are very focused on quality, but we're also very focused on speed to learning. And so we use different tools depending on the feature or where we're coming from. That can be an A/B test, it can be a holdback, it can be something that we just ship because we think it's the right thing. And it just depends on what we're doing, but oftentimes we'll rely on quantitative or rely on the qualitative. Sometimes it's just talking to a merchant and doing it because it's the right thing to do. And so just a varying kind of set of tactics based on what we're working on.
And Samantha, again, your world is a bit unique, but each of these games count, millions of dollars to make, and they potentially would generate a lot more than that. So how do you not worry about, you'll have, your competitors walking in and looking at what you're doing and try to copy that? Like, how do you balance that out?
It is true that the game industry has been somewhat secretive in the past, but I do think the culture is changing. I think that the younger generations are valuing transparency, and we have very large teams, hundreds if not thousands of people. Very hard to keep things under wraps. So you might be better off positioned to simply change your approach, especially if you're bringing your consumers in at that 20 or 30% mark. You really have to establish a two-way relationship. That means you have to give them information and they'll help you with that information. So it's what we call radical transparency, and it really flips marketing on its head. It changes from marketing very near to something's launch to really an ongoing relationship, a very community-led program where you're engaging in the open in real time, and you have to accept that. Yes, people are going to see what you're doing. Yes, consumers. Yes, competitors. Very hard to fast follow in our industry, and you have to get the benefit out of that. It's a trade-off, and our feeling is that the benefits from the higher engagement that you'll get if your product is really tuned outweigh any negatives that you might have from folks coming in too early. And that relationship that you form with your consumer, ideally those consumers will then be early advocates for you when it is time to launch at a bigger scale. They're oftentimes the most engaged. They're the ones that are pulling others into an experience that they feel proud of, that they helped craft and create.
And do either of you run into the issue, although your products are a bit different than video games?
Yes and no. I mean, here, the reality is with financial services, I shouldn't say this, in our business, obviously, we're a heavy co-brand business, and so if you want a JetBlue card, it will be a Barclays card. But most brands are somewhat commoditized, right?
Yeah.
And the brands that win in the future are the brands that understand customer service and customer experience. And so we are always, first of all, we always sort of take a look at our competitive set, what's happening in the financial services ecosystem. There's obviously a lot of interesting fintechs that are doing really, really great things. So we spend a lot of time understanding that. But then more importantly, what's our competitive set today? Who's doing what? And then what does the future look like? We always want to sort of lean in. What's the next 3 to 5 years look like, and how can we get ahead of that? And then, frankly, we go into our innovation lab and we start thinking about what's the problem. You know, your typical approach. What's the problem statement? Understanding then who our personas are. What are the things that could be buzzkills for them, where are there opportunities for those personas, and then we start sort of developing a product, right, with some hypothesis on what we think this particular loyalty program and how it would tie back into an airline program would look. And then obviously the whole testing approach kicks in. And so we're a big believer of, one, you have to build the right product for the customer, with the mindset of what's happening competitively, and then where is the future of your business headed. So it's kind of a multi-pronged strategy. And I will say, listen, the world we all live in is getting far more complex. So some of this sounds kind of straightforward and easy, and a lot of you are probably already doing this in your organizations, but once you actually get in it, you realize we're making it sound quite easy, but it's not. It's hard. It's really hard.
Arpan, from your point of view, you are, operate in a highly competitive industry as well. How do you, ensure that your competitive strength remains intact, and somebody's not copying a lot of those features?
Yeah, I mean, we really feel like we're a product company, and what sets us apart is the quality of our execution. And so, like, everything that we do is about removing friction from a merchant's experience. Everything from the first run onto Shopify to how we price to the app experiences that we support to the expansion tactics that we have, from our capital loans program to our fulfillment and logistics program to the point of sale, right? So, I think, like, we are big believers that everyone is a product thinker inside of the company. If you're a salesperson, you're a product thinker. If you're in customer support, you're a product thinker. I just think it trickles through literally every decision that we make. The quality of the experience, the quality of the product, having no broken windows anywhere in the experience is something we are extremely prideful about. We have very few researchers at the company. Everyone is their own researcher. It's incumbent upon all the leaders, all the individual contributors to talk to customers and to distill those insights and to take them back to their team. So just scaling product thinking is a huge part of kind of joining Shopify.
Yeah. Thanks. We have a question from the audience. Let me read that out. It says, what future customer engagement and product development opportunities do you see in the metaverse? Anyone want to take a stab at that?
Samantha, I think, might be playing mostly in that space. She might have a great answer here.
It is true that games are like their own little mini verses right now, and they are in real time. They have high engagement, and we have the opportunity, especially with products that are set in real life, to sort of mirror real life. And so if there are, in the future, if there are brands that are launching something in real life, they could launch something in the digital world, real life, at the same time. It would give them a lot of instant telemetry on what types of clothing items or furniture. If you think about something like The Sims, which is set in the real world, it's a dollhouse that lets our players engage with real life to live out their best life, their alternative life. What are they wearing? What kind of furniture do they want? What kind of homes are they building? What sorts of relationships are they having? We want to make that as realistic for them as possible. And so partnering with brands is natural because it's what people do in real life.
And I would just add, from a commerce perspective, transactions will happen in that metaverse. And so we're very interested in that interplay, because I believe in the future, whatever happens in this real life will also be enabled in the metaverse. And so all brands, I think, have a role to play. And I know some of us are still tinkering and some of us are further along. But it's going to be fascinating and quickly upon us.
I think it's tempting to sort of think about the metaverse as sort of this binary thing, and it can feel very dystopian if you just kind of like think about it that way, where everyone has a mask and they're kind of sitting in this digital world for the whole day. I think what's more likely is that it starts to trickle into the way that we do work. I do think that the enterprise is going to be the way that the metaverse starts to become a part of our lives. Companies will buy these for employees. They'll be around in your house, and you'll wonder what you can do with them outside of work. And I think once that happens, certain consumer behaviors are going to start to take off. But the idea of putting on a mask for an hour a day to do a work meeting or to meet up with someone who has, shares an interest with you, those are things that feel really interesting. And I do think that that feels like a plausible path forward for how kind of the metaverse starts to gain traction.
Let me again ask you a follow-up on that. And I have seen some examples of really cool technologies that Shopify does on augmented reality. How are you currently using that, where you're at least taking the first step into a virtual world?
Yeah, we've been kind of on the forefront of AR. Primarily, I think use cases are really clear in commerce around kind of furniture and things like that, or planning, or clothing, right? Like, what would this set of glasses look like on my face, or how would this desk fit in my room? And again, so I think this is just about Shopify really investing in an emerging technology and trying to predict the future and get our merchants there as quickly as possible. When we have done this and merchants have taken this on, their conversion really lifts, and you start to see how impactful it can be for small businesses who, again, otherwise wouldn't have the tooling because it's expensive or only available to larger merchants.
A fair point. So we have about a minute left. Any final words from any one of you?
Well, thank you for having us. How's that? Thrilled to be here. We could have probably talked for another half hour on this subject because there's so much to
cover. It's a worthy topic.
Yes.
Yeah, engagement is so critical, and our consumers can play such an important part of that earlier than ever before.
Yeah, and for us, talking to merchants, how we build, it's all really just a confidence building exercise. Like, how are you developing the confidence that what you're building is the right thing? That can be a handful of conversations. It can be analyzing a ton of data. It can be looking at competitors. It just depends. And I think what we coach our teams to do is to not be ideological about it. Just be pragmatic. And oftentimes that leads to the fastest learning. And we sort of pride ourselves on going as fast as possible.
Yeah. And I can tell you from my point of view, when I've seen these technology companies over the last decade, you see very few big failures now because of the iterative nature of how they create products, or write software for that matter. You don't really, come up with a hiccup that everything, suddenly falls apart because of the way things are built. And that has real revenue and profit implications for everybody. Thanks so much, and we're on time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage LG Electronics Corporate Senior Vice President for Innovation and Head of LG Nova, Sok-Woo Ri, and Harman Vice President of Global Marketing Automotive, Tom Rivers, with Bloomberg's Lisa Abramowitz.
I'm really excited for this panel because I get to learn what these two wonderful individuals do, and they're really both creative in terms of what they do and how they approach innovation. Right? When we think about innovating, it is no longer going into a room with a pencil and a piece of paper and lots of angst and just trying to figure out what's best. So let's get started with really a question around what you guys actually do, how you would describe your jobs. Sok-Woo Ri as well as Tom Rivers. Sok-Woo, why don't you start? What is it that you actually do?
Yeah, Lisa, I think you hit the head of a nail. Innovation, the word innovation, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but it changed. It was 50 years, 60 years ago, there was a bright scientist who worked on something in the lab for 10 years and come with a new product, and boom, it changed the world. That still happens sometimes, but the world has become more collaborative. That's the word I use. So in LG Electronics, they created this innovation center last year. We were only a year and a half old. And our mission is to come up with the new businesses that LG is not in today, okay, using the means called outside in. So we primarily work with the startups and outside companies and bring their insights, bring their ideas together with the LG and co-create the business. That's how we approach this this world.
Tom?
Yeah, great. Work for Harman, and Samsung is our parent company. And when I say I work for Harman, most people go to Harman Kardon, which is sort of half right. Harman Kardon is one of our audio brands. So at Harman, we have 3 businesses. The largest one is automotive, which I'll be talking about that. The second part is the brands that we own. So you're probably familiar with JBL, Harman Kardon, Infinity, and then some premium brands, including AKG, Mark Levinson, et cetera. And we partner with other audio brands like Bowers & Wilkins and Bang & Olufsen. So that's another significant business. So if you wear headphones, portable speakers, professional sound systems, or in the car, that's the audio brands. And the last piece is digital transformation solutions, which is what we call LifeWare, which is changing the digital experience from analog.
Okay, so when I think about innovating and kind of what you both do, you're both at the cross sections of using crowdsourced data and different nodes of information to understand what people want. So how do you go about even beginning to understand what data to collect to begin parsing out what people may want that they don't have yet, Tom?
Yeah. Process, it's a good process question, and it's never really the easiest answer, but first looking at industry trends. I'll talk mostly about automotive in this discussion. In the automotive space, there's an acronym called CASE, which is consumerization, autonomy, shared riding experiences, and electrification. So in a macro view, we always are looking at the big trends. We then ingest that internally, and we created in 2018 a project which is ongoing called Project Move, which stands for Mind-Blowing One Vehicle Experience.
Very technical. Carry on.
But within that, we've done a deep dive. It started in 2018 on this industry trends and unpacking what consumers' unmet needs are in their vehicle. And as an example, one of those is that they want the car to be a third living space. Now, you may say, what's the second living space? Probably. The first living space is your home. The second living space is your outdoor living area. We've seen an expansion of homes and even going beyond that, tiny homes, et cetera. And the third one that we uncovered was that they want their car to be, from the consumerization perspective, bringing those experiences that are outside the car, inside the car. So that, because going from point A to point B can be pretty boring. Part of that innovation process, we unpacked this notion, and I heard it earlier in some of the discussions around going from analog to a digital experience. And we've coined the phrase in an industry now called EPM, or experiences per mile. So going from RPMs in the car, so revolutions per minute, to EPMs, which are experiences per mile. And from that, last part of innovation is we created at Harman the EPM Advisory Council, and many of you probably are on it. LG is on it, Salesforce is on it, the Weather Channel is on it, SAP, and 5 other automotive companies. So just giving you the broad view of how trends create now this advisory council that is, as you said, crowdsourcing other ideas to drive experiences in the car. And I'll come back later to explain more of that.
Okay, so Saku, before we get into what makes a mind-blowing experience or that counts as experience per revolution, I'm just wondering from your perspective, what data you look at, what types of solutions you're looking to really achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my case, our center's mission is create something from nothing. So that's basically what it is, because we are supposed to work, and we are working on digital health, for example, energy and metaverse. And none of those sectors, LG Electronics has a footprint as of today. So that is my mission. To do it, the data we collect is extremely difficult to even define because we don't even know what field we're gonna be. So the way we work with it is, instead of us trying to collect the data, we work with the startups. We work with a large number of startups. So the way you said, what data we collect startups, put it that way. And then the way we do that is we open up an open solicitation. We call that Grand Challenge Program. And then we basically say, hey, LG is interested in so many different things, but you guys are the experts. Please bring your suggestions, ideas, how you're gonna work with LG instead of we tell you how we wanna work with you. So last year, we opened the first Grand Challenge Program. We received 1,300 proposals from startups, and we picked top 10. And once we pick top 10, we make investments, and they will literally create a business unit to co-create business with those startups. Because we are not the experts, startups are experts, and they can tell us better. So that's what you meant, you feel as much about by collecting data. That's how we collect data.
Okay, before we get into the experiences per minute, et cetera, Sakwa, I just want to follow up on one thing, because you are an expert in the Internet of Things. And this concept of understanding the collective wisdom in a crowdsourced venue. How do you use those kinds of databases, what we do on the internet, how we experience life, how do you sort of access that to really feed into what you do?
So you use the word Internet of Things. So we collect a lot of data from the devices and appliances that we sell. But at the same time, that data, unless we know exactly what to look for, the data is not very valuable. Information extracted out of data is valuable. So in that sense, what data, we can collect any data, but I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but the philosophy is that you need to really figure out what you are looking for from the data. And same with when you're working with all these solicitations and stuff too. I mean, you have a lot of data points you can collect, but then you gotta first understand what you're looking for.
So, and there's a lot of questions within that. Before that, Tom, from your perspective, how do you understand what someone's experience of their car is like, what someone's experience of what they hear is like, and what they might prefer to see more of?
Yeah, great question. So part of this EPM, Experience Per Mile Advisory Council, was set up to have two components. One is to define what those experiences would look like, and the second one is to how do we measure them. So we did an exploratory research, and we created the industry's first EPM, or Experience Per Mile, index scoring. Now, that's all crowdsourced from every time you go. An example, there's 4 types of driving experiences. There's commuting, right? There's sort of long-haul family vacations. There's sort of going from driving your kids to school and running errands and so forth. And every time you have those experiences, you're going to be rating your car. So something would come up on the dash, you'd be clicking on that rating experience. That's the index that we created will be launched probably in the next year, and that's why we created this EPM Advisory Council with 33 companies that are all contributing to that. So we're going to be able to collect real-time data. Now, where this is going from a consumer perspective is you can then see on car A, B, and C the rating index score. You'd be able to pick as a consumer, I would like that car because it delivers that type of an experience for me. Now, behind the scenes at Harman, just a little double click on what we're doing to drive that, some of these spaces that we've created to drive those experiences, as an example, we created a product called ReadyCare. ReadyCare is able to monitor your focus while you're driving. Are your eyes looking straight ahead? Are you concentrating? And we can also track biometric behavior. That then drives consumer experiences to be more safe, et cetera. So we know if you're paying attention. I think we've all driven, 5 miles without remembering what 5 miles we just did, or half mile, never. We can now actually determine if you really are paying attention, and
Yay.
we can actually change that experience in the car.
I was just thinking that, if you have to rate your experience and your kids have been complaining in the back seats, negative, 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 how you strip it out. But you answered that with the control group.
Yeah.
Sakwa, from your perspective, you talk about all the data that you have. That's not the problem. It's really asking the questions, figuring out what to figure out, how to parse the noise from the signal, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder how much this is an algorithmically kind of driven searching for something versus going back to that room with somebody sitting there with a piece of paper and a pencil, trying to scratch out something interesting.
So that is actually a good question. So out of the 1,300 proposals, is first, you need to figure out, you need to be able to say that, okay, am I looking for a company that's going to work with us in the sector that we want to work with us? That's the first thing. And second thing is it a company that has a capacity or technology to work with us? And third thing is, are they willing to work with us? Are they in the right sector to build business together? Now, with 1,300, we were able to do that manually. Now, this year, in the second challenge, we received over 2,200 proposals. It's a data points, okay? 22 startups all over the world. Now, it suddenly became almost impossible for us to do that manually. So we had to create some kind of automated mechanism to evaluate them, at least on the get-go. And the first is so, but the principle's the same. Is it the partner in the right place, right sector that we want to work with? Are they willing to work with us? What kind of business they want to create it? And then do they have a capacity and technology to do that with us? So you have to first define what you're looking for, and then you can automate it at that point. So that's probably the best answer I can give right now.
And Tom, from your perspective, when you talk about signal from the noise, you know, somebody might be driving and say, I'd be really happy right now if a Slurpee straw came down and I could have some Slurpee, but that wouldn't necessarily be an experience with staying power. So how do you determine what's going to be a good experience in 5 years versus now?
Yeah, great question. Again, part of the innovation process, crowdsourcing, or this EPM Advisory Council, all the ideas are coming to the table. And as Harman, we have to figure out, well, what technology is going to drive that experience? So an example of sort of future-proofing is the notion that, like our mobile device, we either get an operating system update. I just got the latest 16. But your car is much different. It has a brain inside of it called this head unit. We are actually going to be turning the car into basically a software-enabled vehicle where you can change the hardware out or the brain out in the car, so to make it future-proof. What's behind that, though, is you can then change the entire experience in the car by putting new hardware in it, coupled with software. So said differently is that your car can have a new life, a completely new experience, and it's future-proofed that way. We are selling this to automotive companies right now on their future plans, because they're building cars that are 4 years out right now. So we have to be that much further in advance. At Harman, though, what's happening in the automotive industry, it's going through a huge transformation between EV vehicles and ICE vehicles, or internal combustion. OEMs are looking, or auto companies are looking for ways of getting rid of costs, simplification, et cetera. So as a tier one supplier, we're actually moving our business model to not just be engineering for OEMs, but creating products that they just plug in. So it's a completely different business model that we're driving. We call this consumer experience automotive grade. So at the core of what we're doing is innovating these experiences, driving business and change for the automotive companies is our mission. And with our parent company, Samsung, they providing us quite a bit of technologies to advance that.
Are you guys rivals, by the way?
Well, they sit on the council, so he has a free.
If I want to add one more, so I think one of the interesting questions: how do you figure out what is meaningful in the data? How do you figure out what to extract out of the data? So one of the interesting things is when you have thousands of data points from different startups all over the world, trends emerge, and we can see it. And when you analyze those startups, then we can see a certain overlap of interesting emerging technologies, and seems like that's where a lot of startups are investing their time and money. Give an example. We do digital health, and we also do metaverse. What we realized last year is a lot of startups are actually, a lot of investors are putting money into the intersection between the digital health and metaverse. And that was something we didn't expect before we actually look at the data. But once you look at it and start analyzing, you see this interest emerge, and that could potentially be something we want to focus on too.
Can you give us an example, Sakwan? I realize you're only a year and a half old, so it's hard to do this, but can you give us something sort of concrete, the sort of concept of something, of a path forward that you guys see and have seen through this intersection of the different sectors and the data there?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I just mentioned, for example, digital health is this is a really broad sector. But when you see the emergence of metaverse and, for example, physical therapy, And you don't have to go to the therapy, the place to do it. Sometimes you can do it on metaverse. I mean, it's a musculoskeletal therapy that you follow what's on the screen, and it's FDA approved. Actually, it gives you how to move your body and get the healing, basically. And that is a very interesting trend that's coming up. ESG, we call it ESG in general, but sustainability and plus sustainability with a carbon capture, that is being, a lot of money is being invested into the sector. So I can tell you those two sectors right now seems to be one that is, even with the economic downturn, and we've talked about a lot of different things, still pretty strong.
How do you weigh, and Tom, this I know is directly applicable to you, giving your information to enough people to get feedback and understand whether it's going to be successful versus the fact that other people are going to want to do the same thing and compete with you?
Yeah, part of that product innovation process and not just only doing engineering, but productizing these experiences so an automotive company can just actually plug it in. We have in our stage gate process consumer feedback all along the way. Right down to the ideation, when they're defining the product, willingness to pay, how much they're willing to pay. So when we then take that data with the product, with the consumer feedback, with the product to our automotive customers, we're giving them the full package. And they're very willing to buy once they see the consumer data. Now, it might differ from a Mercedes buyer to maybe a Ford Focus buyer, but our premises is still there that those consumers have given us that feedback, and we're sharing that directly to the automotive companies. And we're leading in this space. Our entire business is changing, and we're seeing a really high receptivity from automotive customers. Again, all automotive customers are our customers. There isn't one that we don't do business with, but they like our innovative approach and our consumer experience lens and all the data we're getting back on that.
So, great question. So, how do you draw a line between pre-competitive collaboration and competitive collaboration? So, it actually comes down to philosophy. So, our philosophy in LG Nova is the best innovation comes out of collaboration. That's it. That's why we do this. So what that means is, yes, we share a lot of information with our partners, and sometimes it's public information. We just make them public. But at the end of the day, we believe through this kind of sort of like co-creation process, 1 + 1 can come out with something more than 2. And that's what they're shooting for. So you are asking, okay, how do you share the data, still keep the competitive advantage? Yes, there will be co-created business that we're going to own, but until that point, the data is shared and more partners come to us, more partners want to work with us. That's the sign that our business, what's going to come out of it, we're going to be more successful. So that's this sort of philosophical question, I think, is a little weird to talk about philosophy here, but that's what it is.
Well, it's actually deeply philosophical. We didn't get into data privacy, and then we didn't get into a whole host of things. We only have about 30 seconds left. I'm just wondering, do you feel like the time cycle, the timeline for innovations has shortened dramatically just simply because of how quickly everything's accelerating? And we only have about 30 seconds.
Answers yes to that. The crowdsourcing, the collaboration, the consortium idea, it really advances things much quicker. And I think at the pace of what consumers want, I think in automotive business tend to be slower, but we're seeing it speed up, and we've adapted to that speed through collaboration. Yeah.
The answer is yes, but speed itself doesn't really solve the problem. What solves the problem is the quality of the innovation that comes out of it. And the world has changed that you can get better quality by working with others. That's our approach. Yeah.
So there's a red light flashing telling me stop right now. Saku Ri, as well as Tom Rivers, both of you, thank you so much. Tremendously interesting. Thank you. Nice job. All right, guys, that is
a wrap for the morning. I just thought in case you were interested in some headlines, the markets had sold off earlier, but that's kind of waning a little bit, which is kind of nice to see. Another one has to do with Musk. We talked about this, plan to eliminate a bunch of jobs. And Kellyanne Conway expects a Trump announcement soon on a run in 2024. So the news cycle continues. It is lunchtime. We hope you enjoyed the morning. Don't forget, we have a lot of great conversations coming back. For lunch, Bloomberg staff will help you direct you to an elevator bank because you're going to head to the 28th floor where lunch will be served. And then we will see you back here at 1:45 p.m. sharp. We're going to talk about the ethical use of customer data. We're going to talk about how technology making it all happen. And we've got some more fireside chats. We're going to talk with Anton Vincent, president of Mars Wrigley North America, and Tony Vinciquerra, who is the chairman and CEO of Sony Pictures Entertainment. So we'll see you back this afternoon, 1:45 p.m. sharp. Have a good lunch, everybody.
You know, I feel so dirty when they start talking cute. I wanna tell her that I love her, but the point is probably moot. Cause she's watching him with those eyes, and she's loving him with that body, I just know it. And he's holding her in his arms late, late at night. You know, I wish that I had Jesse's girl. I wish that I had Jesse's girl. Where can I find her? One thing I said that I would never do. A look from you and I would fall from grace, and that would wipe the smile right from my face. Do you remember when we used to dance, and incidents arose from circumstance? One thing led to another, we were young, and we would scream together songs unsung. It was the heat of the moment, telling me what my heart meant. The heat of the moment showed in your eyes. And now you find yourself in 82. The disco hotspots hold no charm for you. You can't concern yourself with bigger things. You catch a pull and ride the dragon.